I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. and I'll call on Councillor Hanley to read the land acknowledgement.
The city of Thorold is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nation, such as the Hatiaiwanak, Durank, the Audishani, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people across the Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The city of Thorold stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands in which we live.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, can I get a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda? I got a mover, Councillor D'Angelo, a seconder, Councillor Sentence. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Adoption of the minutes. Can I get a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes? I've got Councillor O'Hara and then Councillor Decker. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Statutory public meeting under the Planning Act. I'd like to call to order the public meeting being held pursuant to the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended, respecting zoning bylaw amendment for 10 Sullivan Avenue. Presentations. Up first, staff presentation. I'll call on Nick Bogart for the presentation respecting the zoning bylaw amendment application. Is Nick present? Nick's on Zoom. Okay. Welcome, Nick. You're up.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Clerk, will I be sharing my screen or do you have the presentation up?
You should be able to share your screen if you'd like, Nick.
Great, thank you. There we go.
Go ahead, Nick. It's up.
Can everyone see that okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. Good evening, members of council, members of the public. My name is Nick Bogart. I'm an associate with MHPC, and we're providing temporary planning services to the city. I'll be presenting the zoning bylaw amendment application that will facilitate the construction of a McDonald's restaurant on the subject lands. The property is located on the south side of Sullivan Avenue, east of Pine Street South, and west of Towpath Street. The subject lands have an area of 0.6 acres and are currently vacant. The lands are surrounded on the north and east by commercial uses, and to the south by an existing elementary school. There's also an apartment building located to the west, with some single detached dwellings located on the south side of Sullivan Avenue, as well as to the northeast of the property. This is the concept plan that the applicants had provided with the applications. So the purpose is to facilitate the development of the subject lands for a McDonald's restaurant with drive-through facilities. The restaurant is proposed to be approximately 4,400 square feet in size, and will accommodate approximately 80 seats. And there's been supporting studies provided and submitted with the application, including a planning justification report. There's a noise impact assessment, and then a proposed site plan. And just to orient a bit on the site here, there's Pine Street on the left of the screen, and then Sullivan on the bottom, and then Towpath on the side. These are just a couple of the elevations showing the Pine Street and the Sullivan Street frontage. Pine Street's on the left here, and then the Sullivan one on the bottom. So the applicant had submitted a zoning bylaw amendment by Sullivan by the Park, and the property is currently zoned C2 in the zoning bylaw. Commercial uses are permitted, but not a drive-through restaurant as of right. So there's a requirement for a site-specific zoning bylaw to permit the proposed drive-through. And they've also added a special regulation to reflect the particulars of the property, and that's related to the flankage yard setback. And just to clarify, that's an amendment to the zoning bylaw 60-2019. Public notice for the application was provided in accordance with the Planning Act requirements. The application was circulated and comments received to date are shown here. So we had public comments raising concerns related to traffic in the area, including concerns with drivers not stopping at stop signs. And there were letters of support received from a student housing provider, their property owner on Front Street, and then also the Niagara Board of Trade. And then agency and department comments are just summarized on the next slide here. I guess I'll quickly go through them. So no comments received from Electra, Canada Post, or Enbridge, no concerns. Same with the school board. The engineering department, there was a request for some additional drawings and also information to be included as part of the site plan approval for the application. And planning on behalf of us, there were no concerns. There was some additional information requested, which was provided, and then there'll be a requirement for some landscaping to be addressed through site plan approval. And then Niagara Region had no concerns. They agreed with the conclusions of the noise study, and the recommendations in that study will be implemented through the site plan control. So finally, just to summarize, the purpose tonight is to receive comments on the application from the public. Council is also requested to consider a staff recommendation report regarding the application, and planning staff support the application and recommend the council approve the requested zoning bylaw amendment. So that was it for me. If there's any questions, comments from council, I'll be happy to take those.
Thank you very much, Nick, and now I'll open the floor for any questions. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Nick. Nick, how many people will this employ?
I don't recall offhand the number of employees. I just remember there being the reference to the seating, and I think it was seating for approximately 80 people, if I recall.
Is that employees?
No, that's the capacity of the restaurant for seating.
Okay.
I don't recall offhand the number of employees that were expected.
Okay. No, I'm sure it'll be substantial. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Longo, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Nick. Nick, there was a comment from a resident, and I had somebody else call me, about traffic concerns. And I see there's a noise study that's been done. Is a traffic study going to be required?
There was no requirement for a traffic study identified through the pre-consultation. So the applicant submitted the required noise study, and of course the planning justification report, but there is no request for traffic.
Okay, so is there a need for a traffic study being on that busy corner or not? Or that would not be a requirement?
No, it would not be a requirement.
Okay. And finally, my last question is, you had agencies that had commented. You had the Niagara Catholic School Board, but that abuts District School Board of Niagara, which is a separate or public board. Were they spoken to regarding this?
They were circulated on the application. They didn't provide any comments or provide any correspondence back, so they were included in the chart.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor O'Hare, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Bogart, I just have a couple of questions about the barrier-free accessible parking. If you could just provide me with a little bit more detail on that. From the way I look at the plan, the accessible parking is on the other side of the drive-through. And so how would persons parking in the accessible parking enter the restaurant?
So I've seen it designed like this in some newer McDonald's, and they have the around the front of the restaurant. There's a ability to get into. There's kind of a patio area. If you want to pull up the map here.
So they would walk to Pine Street and then in through the entrance, the front entrance?
I'm just gonna pull up the plan so we can take a look at that. See if I can make it a little bigger. So I see what you mean there about the accessible parking there. And then there's an area in front where there will be a pathway there. And then there's an area here where they would come into the restaurant there on the back. Or you're right, they would go around and then in the front, because the main entrance is really at the corner addressing Pine Street and Sullivan. Certainly there'll be further review with things like that related to site plan that'll be undertaken as part of that process. So that's something I'll take a note of and just go make sure that's adequately addressed so that it's clear what the pathway is for that.
I'm just wondering if perhaps maybe there could be an accessible parking spot closer to that eastern door. I guess that's recycle bins and garbage bins at the further end of that location. I'm not sure what that area is designated for right now, but as the drive-through goes past it, if there'd be room for accessible parking there.
And I'm wondering if, I don't have those elevations up. I'm wondering if that back corner entrance is actually for an employee entrance, that it's not necessarily to the public dining room. So that is something I'll jot down just to address the site plan. Maybe we can tweak how that is addressed a little bit.
Great, thank you. And one more question, just so I understand, is the drive-through, everything through the drive-through and out the Pine Street entrance, is that one way? Or is the Pine Street entrance going to be a two-way passageway?
The width of both entrances is for two-way traffic.
Okay.
But just the way the site it flows, it's conceivable that most of the traffic would flow from towpath through the site and over to Pine Street, but it will be two-way on each side.
Mm-hmm. And will there be something in place at the end of the drive-through where they're about to exit in the direction of Pine Street to make sure that traffic coming in and traffic going out doesn't lead to any collisions?
There could be a stop sign, or if there's a yield sign put up. I can't recall what I've seen on some other McDonald's on how they do that.
Okay. All right then.
I'll
Thank
make note of that too, to look at that through the site plan.
you. Great. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Jason, did you want to comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take this opportunity to advise council what's before them today is just pertain to the zoning of the property. All the details of the design will be worked out through the site plan process, which is still to come yet.
Councillor DeAngelo, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just looking at the design of it, the one feature, now that Mr. Simpson mentioned that, I guess, is this the first design or has it gone through multiple stages to get to this point? Mr. Mayor?
Nick, go ahead.
Thank you. This is the first design that we've seen for it, so we've only seen the one design go through. I see Megan put her hand up, so maybe she has something to add through the pre-consultation.
Megan, go ahead.
Hi, this application actually started, I believe, a year and a half ago while Denise was the manager of planning here. Serge has gone through 3 different designs, if I'm correct, that were talked about through a pre-consultation with Denise and Paul Klassen at the time. So through the different comments that planning gave to the applicant, I believe this is now the 3rd or 4th site plan. But the formal site plan application would follow the zoning bylaw application tonight.
Thank you, Megan. Councillor DeAngelo?
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That answers my question in terms of design, because there's a couple of features I want to highlight, I think, that are really good, is the design of the drive-through coming through the property. It can hold up to 15 cars, which is pretty impressive, because I know there's other facilities in our community that have traffic issues when there's a lot of bottlenecks. So I like how they designed it so it's a 2 system where you can have 2 cars come in. So I think that some good thought has been put into that. I want to commend the individuals who worked through that process under the previous design. So I thought that's a really good one. And also the second part I really like the design of is the fact that the building is facing the most southern part of the property. So when you're actually going down Pine Street, which is the main gateway into downtown Thorold coming off Highway 58, you're going to see an impressive building as opposed to a large parking lot. So I think, again, I want to reiterate, I think that's a very positive design in the sense that they've moved it closest to the southern part of the property. And I know there might have to be a bit of tweaking with the accessibility and some of the other pedestrian on site, but I think that could be finalized. But I think they've come up with a couple impressive points that I think are really good in this design. So I like the looks of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Nick and Megan. And I'm going to now go on to the applicant presentation. And I'll call on Serge Carpino for an opportunity to provide any additional information or answer any questions from council regarding the project. Go ahead, Serge.
Is that on?
Yep, you're
Okay,
on
thank
now.
you.
Please state your name and address. For
Serge
the-
Carpino. I'm the proponent here proposing the zoning bylaw amendment for 10 Sullivan Avenue, Sullivan by the Park. Just to confirm a couple of points that were made here. And Megan did a great job. We went back and forth internally before we came to planning, probably about 5 or 6 different site plans. And we juggled it all the way around, and finally around the end, when Mr. Paul Klassen was here, we sat down, had a meeting of minds, and cut right to the chase. And I asked exactly what's it going to take to put this together, along with the help of Jason Simpson, who was very helpful as well. And we came to a flourishing of this final site plan that's before you. We addressed traffic flow. We addressed any kind of sort of where the building should go, the parking should go, and I think it checks all the boxes. McDonald's has 44,000 stores internationally, so they have templates for everything. I'm sure anything that we're going to tweak, as Mr. Jason Simpson said, during site plan approval, we're going to tweak those things. And everybody, we're excited about this. I think it's a great project for Thorold. As BIA chairman, this is my biggest accomplishment to bring downtown, and I'm proud to say that. Along with Councillor DeRose asked about employment. They're hoping to employ anywhere between 50 and 60 people, staff, cash, middle managers, 3 shifts. It's going to bring a lot of positive things to the community. And say nothing about, they become good corporate neighbors. They reinvest in the community. They give back with sponsorships. So all our clubs are going to be benefactors of whatever McDonald's does. The McDonald House, which everybody knows, it just does fantastic stuff, and provides great things for people in need for that function. I think all in all, I think it's great for everybody. Everybody wins. Right now, I'm getting probably about less than $6,000. I'm charged about $6,000 taxes. I assume that's going to probably quadruple or plus. So more money in the city coffers as opposed to, like Councillor Dan just said, it's just an empty lot that we go there and cut the grass every 2 weeks. And to his point about the gateway to downtown, what better attraction than a AAA tenant, worldwide, international store to bring people in. And then once they put their MTO signs in front of the tunnel to direct people downtown, everybody's going to win. We have a fantastic city asset, $14.2 million asset, along with the money that went to Battle Beaver Dams Park. But the reality is, folks, is we need bodies downtown. We need to let people know that we have a downtown. I can tell you as a realtor, I bring people to town in the West community. They don't even know we have a downtown. I think this helps advertise, and everybody's going to win. It's going to complement all the other merchants. you know, you're gonna have a concentrated audience there of new people that are otherwise may not have come to Thorold. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have. And,
Thank you, and I'll open the floor. I have, first of all, Counselor Sentence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thanks for the presentation, Serge, and well done, Nick, as well. More of a comment than a question. I like this because of all the things we lose in Thorold, and this is kind of a win for me. So I like the way it looks. There are things to be tweaked, but I'm looking forward to the process. Thank you.
Counselor O'Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Also, Mr. Carpino, congratulations on bringing this development to Thorold. It's a long time coming, that's for sure.
thank you.
You're welcome. I have a couple of questions, and there are more things to consider when you're in further discussions, as Mr. Simpson pointed out, when you're tweaking some of the design and development. So just a couple of questions. I see that on the southern side of the building, there is the delivery door. So I'm assuming that when deliveries arrive, they'll be parking on Sullivan to enter the building through that door. Is that?
No, there's no parking or access, through you, Mr. Mayor, apologize. There's not gonna be any vehicles parked on Sullivan.
Oh, okay.
No, absolutely not.
Excellent.
And when they come, they schedule the deliveries in the off hours. Like, you know, when it's practically
Excellent.
dead, there's nobody
Those
there.
are the exact answers I was looking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim.
Now, of course, people know me. I'm always concerned about the mature tree growth in Thorold, and we're going to lose two very large trees on site. It's just inevitable if we're going to be putting a building there. So I'm hoping that once you get to site plan, that these trees that we're losing will be replaced a few times over, I'm hoping, not just for our environment, but also for stormwater runoff and to help beautify that whole corner. So I hope that'll play a strong role once you get to site plan, and there's multiple options for new tree plantings to put in. So I'm just hoping that that'll be one of the tweaked areas.
To you, Mr. Mayor, may I respond to that? Yeah?
Yes, go ahead.
Actually, the two trees that you're referring to are black walnut trees. And when we had our original proposal for the 32 condominiums, part of the plan was to try to keep them or sort of encompass them. I can't guarantee that those trees will stay, but, you know, I could tell you that McDonald's is very, very cooperative and very willing to accommodate whatever they can. And at site plan approval, certainly the landscaping will be part of the site plan approval process, and I think that we could probably deal with that at that point.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Counselor Dividitis.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the news was so big for the downtown to get a major player like McDonald's. It opens up so much doors of opportunity and attracting more business. I love how much McDonald's does and gets involved in the community. Team sponsorships, great new job opportunities. Not to mention the amazing charity work with Ronald McDonald's House. They help out so many people in Niagara and in Thorold. I could not be more pleased and excited about the opportunity now in attracting more business development and people to the downtown of Thorold. And Serge, you did a great job. To land someone like McDonald's takes a lot of work. I know you did it before with Tim Hortons, but you did a great job, and I'm so happy this is coming to Thorold.
Thank you.
For everybody in the downtown.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions? Go ahead, Counselor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Carpino. Yeah, it's going to be a great project, just what the downtown needed. But I do still have a few questions, and that's what you're here for. So, again, traffic is a concern of mine, so we have to figure out a way to make sure it's not a problem. So when the report comes forward, I'm going to ask a question. But do you have anything to add on traffic studies or concerns or alleviate my fears?
When we sat down at our pre-consultation meetings, and we had a number of them, like going way back to when Adele was here, and there was some minor conversation just after Eldon Darvison was around. about the options of how to develop this property. We tweaked the site plan to minimize your concern about traffic. We moved the drive-through on towpath, at least the place of entry of resistance. Towpath is a very small street. I mean, you don't go there unless you live on towpath. Sullivan and Albert are the entry points and the gateways to the downtown. The region, we looked at that. We had conversations about that. The region, as the planner mentioned, saw that it was accommodating and that there was no need. That wasn't one of the studies that was required from our pre-consultation meeting. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does partially. So, okay, again, my concern, and you mentioned the region, that's our kind of our regional transit hub there. So as long as the region looked at it and they're okay with it, then the professionals must be right. My final comment, and again, I'll bring this up later, but my question to you, and Councillor O'Hare brought it up, and the more I look at this parking layout and the traffic flow, is how does a pedestrian get from the parking lot to the store safely? And has that been accommodated here somewhere?
Yeah, well, like the planner that made the presentation mentioned, if you notice, if you go to the one at Brock,
Yeah.
it's exactly the same layout, where the front of the store is going to be on the southwest part. The main entry, you got to go to the south, so the westerly on the Pine Street to get into the main store on the corner. So if you go and you view the one at Brock, it's exactly the same template. I know your concern is that you have to go from the parking lot, traverse over the drive-through per se to get in there, but that's not the main door. You go around the drive-through to walk in there, similarly like the one here at Brock.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good
Thank
luck
you.
with the project.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor D'Angelo.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some of the questions have been asked, and I just want to congratulate Mr. Carpino, because I think you've hit on a lot of points here. It's the downtown gateway, which is great. That's what people are going to first see coming from the highway once they go down Pine Street. This provides amenities for those living downtown. We're intensifying down there, again, providing the amenities, and then we've spent a lot of money from a city standpoint on Battle of Beaver Dams Park. So we want more events in there, and again, you have the amenities to substantiate that. I look like, again, it's a draw to the downtown. I think on all of our brochures when we were out campaigning, we wanted jobs, and this one's one of the key ones that's going to provide different types of jobs for students, for full-time employment. We could utilize the transit system since it's right around the corner there. So this isn't just an opportunity to work in downtown. You can traverse from different parts of our community to get there in a reasonable fashion to provide, get some employment. So I think you crossed so many T's and dotted so many I's with this that it makes a lot of sense. Again, as you're going through the final site plan, there'll be a little bit of tweaks. I'm sure once this gets out to the public, there'll be some comments, probably some questions, and that will be needed to be addressed. And I know the fact that if you've gone through several versions to get to this stage, I know, and I'm going to ask this question because we're supposed to ask questions, will you be willing to accommodate some of the concerns that might pop up as we go through the final site plan?
Absolutely, and I'm sure McDonald's will agree as well. You know, depending how, like, I can't speak for them because my job is to get the rezoning done, stick handle through that, get that done, and then hand it over to them. I have nothing to do with the site plan approval application once, but I will be there to help them out.
Okay.
And I'm gonna be sort of the conduit with planning and them. I'll be the face of the project. I'm not just gonna sort of go away. So, they're very cooperative. They're, like I said, they have these places worldwide. I'm sure that any tweaking that's required for site plan approval, they will do their best to accommodate, and they want to come. So whatever, if it's reasonable and makes sense to them, I'm sure that we can get to some kind of an amicable conclusion.
Okay, no, that answers my question. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Hanley, go ahead.
Just after everybody talks and looking at the site plan through you, Mr. Mayor, to the chief or to you, Serge, I know of areas where there's McDonald's situated near a fire emergency station, and if congestion occurs because we all know that it's going to be a new thing in town. Everybody's going to be accessing it and looking where towpath is, so they could be coming off of Albert Street and off of Salvin. Do we have any plan in place as far as fire emergency go if congestion occurs on that area? What's our plan? Because I know of Tim Horton Donuts, nothing to do here in another municipality, but actually stopped their drive-through because of congestion that was developed and it affected emergency services.
And you're concerned because of the existing fire hall, am I
The existing
correct?
fire, I know we're in the midst of building one, but this could come to fruition before we move to the new station.
I'll see
And
if,
just a
Chief
plan in
Dixon
place
wants-
if something was to occur and the traffic's blocked.
Chief Dixon, I don't know what the timelines are, as far
Not to put you on the spot, we probably, but
Through you, Mayor, to Councilor Hanley. It's a good point. However, with all due luck, we have about two ways to get out of that area, right? We can go Albert Street or we can go Sullivan. So if we see it backed up, if we come out of the station, see it backed up, we go the opposite direction is all I could ask for. Until we see how much traffic we're really gonna bring there, because you're right, it's new. People are gonna wanna come, so we really don't know that answer right this moment, so.
just in the interim, yeah, I appreciate it, because that's just my only concern is that I know it'd probably be with short-term lived at the time, but just in case.
Thank you. Councilor Longo, you had another question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Something came up when there was a comment made, so I'll ask Mr. Carpino this question. I asked him personally, and he said he didn't have a problem answering. Just so people realize, Mr. Carpino, you're going to own the land, correct? You're leasing it?
Correct.
Okay, I think that's very important because as a local businessman, somebody from the community, we're going to have McDonald's take care of a property and the landlord's going to be nearby. So I think this will be a good development.
Thank you. Any further questions? Go ahead, Councilor DeAngelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to sort of piggyback on Councilor Hanley's question, just in terms of timing, if I could ask through you, Mr. Mayor, the fire chief, when do we expect to be into the new fire hall? Question number one. And then to the presenter or through staff, when do we expect McDonald's to open? Just so we know the timing of the two, if we could get clarity on that. Thank you. It's a good question.
Through you, Mayor, the RFP went out and it came back as June of 2024 for the finalization of the fire station. Right now, we seem to be doing very, very good, but I don't want to get my hopes up, but right now it's June of 2024.
And I think you wanted to find out roughly what you think might be the timeline as well on the McDonald's. Would you have a timeline at this point, or is that premature, Mr. Carpino?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, well, I mean, I guess site plan approval, I mean, depends, I mean, I know that we're kind of full tilt now with planning. I know that there's new planning staff that's come to our city. That's a question really that I kind of want to deflect to planning. I think just a site plan application, I think might take anywhere from 2 to 4 months. I don't know, maybe Mr. Simpson can answer that question a little better. They're ready to go. After this meeting, hopefully, we're going to have a productive, positive council vote that's going to approve this zoning bylaw amendment. And the head honcho that I'm dealing with is on vacation out of the country, and he wants me to send him an email so he could start getting the corporate office to start doing the building plans and doing what they need to do for the process.
Thank you. So we don't have a definitive answer at this point. I think that would be the fair comment on that at
Yes.
this point.
Yeah, just to elaborate then, I'm sure our fire chief will make sure that if there's an overlap, that he'll come up with some contingency plans to make sure the residents of Thorold are safe and that there's no issues there. So I have confidence in both of them that they can come up with a plan. Hopefully, there's no overlap in terms of one coming and the other one moving, so.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Carpino.
Thank you,
for
Mr.
coming to
Mayor.
council
Thank
on
you,
your
council.
presentation. Up next, I have a registered speaker, Aaron, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, PD, or Petty. And is he on Zoom or is he in? I'll call on Aaron as a registered to speak for the to the application. Please provide your full name and address for the public record, And please note, you have 5 minutes to address council. Go ahead, Aaron.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I don't know what's going on with my video here. I'd just like to thank the city of Thorold for allowing me to participate in the meeting, and congratulate Serge on a big move there with bringing some revamp into Thorold. I do love seeing an upward trend in the revamping of the Thorold community, but I do have some concerns as a citizen of Thorold. You know, seeing the McDonald's proposal, like, it was exciting, and then I started looking at the corner there, and that corner's it's a busy corner now. You know, with the two buildings already built, with the student rental and the condo building there. What worries me is obviously the elementary school across the street. Again, with McDonald's, if you're kind of looking at how Tim Hortons is in town, it's a little bit of a dumpster fire when it comes to traffic. I know with it being new, it's going to be extremely busy. It's one of my concerns is just the pedestrians and people abiding by the rules. And I know with, you know, things being the way they are with the economy right now, and you know, everyone's going for the convenience factor, and McDonald's kind of provides that quick meal for everyone. I do worry about how it's going to affect getting around town, especially obviously with the fire department is going to be eventually moving their station, but emergency services and how it's going to gum up all the traffic. So again, 100% into, you know, revamping Thorold, bringing in new businesses. You know, I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy during this whole thing, but it just that whole corner, it's pretty busy now, and I can only imagine, you know, once we introduce like a franchise like McDonald's, because it is a very popular restaurant, it's definitely going to increase the flow and make it a little bit more congested in that area. So that's one of my main concerns as a, you know, Thoroldtonian there. So.
Thank you, Aaron. Could you give us your address? I didn't get that at the beginning for the public record.
On 17 Sullivan Avenue.
Okay. Do you have anything further to state before I open the floor for questions?
No, I do appreciate you guys letting me talk. Thank you again. And yeah, just one of my concerns is a Thoroldtonian there. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Aaron? Go ahead, Councillor Decker.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Aaron, for bringing up your concerns. I guess maybe I should have asked this question earlier, because the more people are talking about congestion at that corner, you could really see that. Have we thought potentially of putting a stoplight there if it warranted that? I'm not sure who could answer that question, or.
Who wants to tackle that from staff? Oh, here he comes. There's our man. Go ahead, Sean. Sean, appreciate you answering that. Sean's from the engineering department, and his department handles these type of issues.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, recently we have done some counting out at that intersection and determined that there wasn't warrants at this point in time. We can add in the expected traffic from the restaurant to that intersection to determine if we need to relook at whether traffic signals should be put in there or not.
Okay. Do you have a question for Sean?
Yes,
okay.
if I could, please.
Councillor Hanley, go ahead. Sean Dunsmore.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Sean. If we were to do that, what would the cost of lighting be? $500,000?
In that neighborhood, yes.
So I just wanted to bring that. That's why I was guessing, because I know at one time, Councillor Decker and I know bringing up the concerns that it was where someone wanted to do it, and at that time, it was several years ago, it was $250,000 to put in four-way stoplights.
Thank you. Councillor Longo, you had your hand up. Go
Yes,
ahead.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't realize Mr. Dunsmore was here tonight. So I asked a question earlier, and I know you're in charge of traffic calming, and so on. My question regarding a traffic study, is it required for this development?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we don't believe so at this point in time, but council certainly can request it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further? Go ahead, Councillor DeAngelo.
Mayor, I know there's been a lot of development downtown that's increasing traffic, not just this project, but other projects. Is this a project, if we find out later that we need to put a stoplight in there, is that something our development charges could pay for as part of our growth of our community?
I'll let Maria answer that. Then I'm going to revert that questions be asked to the presenter, and then we can bring Sean back when the report's on the floor, okay? So if you want to tackle this question, Maria.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we
back.
would have to have a look at our background study to see if there is any intersection that we could substitute at this point. Alternatively, we could consider it when we do our next background study to determine how much of it is benefit to existing development and how much is truly growth related.
Okay, no, it's good that we put that on the radar, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, so again, we're back. Is there any questions for Aaron? Any more questions for staff? We can, when the report comes on the floor, we'll get those addressed. But right now, are there any more questions for Aaron? Okay, seeing none, Aaron, I want to thank you for coming to council and expressing your concerns. And we appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Dunsmore, you can sit down. We'll bring you back when the report comes on. At this time, is there anyone else online or present in the chamber who wishes to speak to the application? Do we have anybody online? I'll ask again. At this time, is there anyone else online or present in the chamber who wishes to speak to this application? We do?
Not to that.
Go ahead, Jeff. State your name and address, and
Sorry, it's not in regards to this application.
Oh, okay. No, thank you. Is there anyone else online or present in the chamber who wish to speak to this application? Jeff said that his isn't regarding this application. Okay. So, planning report 631. Zoning bylaw amendment application for 10 Sullivan Avenue. This item, DS7 2023, will be considered by City Council this evening under agenda item 14.3 immediately following the public meeting. This fulfills the requirements of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP13 pursuant to Section 34. The public meeting portion of this application is now closed. So now we're going to do the report. Okay, so now we're going to deal with the report. DS7 2023 zoning bylaw amendment 10 Sullivan Avenue. Can I get a mover and a seconder? I got Councillor Decker and Councillor DeAngelo. And I'll have Jason Simpson bring the report to the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the recommendations of this report are: one, that Development Services Report DS7 2023 be received, and two, that the zoning bylaw amendment to amend zoning bylaw 60-2019 to rezone the subject lands from downtown mixed use C2 to downtown mixed use with special regulations C2-85 be approved.
Thank
That concludes the recommendations.
And now I'll open the floor for questions to staff. Are there any questions regarding this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. Statutory public meeting under the Planning Act. I'll call to order the public meeting being held pursuant to the provisions of Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13, as amended, respecting zoning bylaw amendment for 49 Hayes Road. Presentations. Applicant presentation. I'll call on Matt Kernahan for the applicant presentation respecting the zoning bylaw amendment application. Welcome to City Council. Matt, take over.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, neighbors, and staff. My name's Matt Kernahan. I'm the planning manager with Upper Canada Consultants. For the public record, our address is 30 Hanover Drive, Unit 3 in St. Catharines, Ontario. I'm the agent for Golden Coast Homes and have made the applications for draft plan of vacant land condominium and zoning bylaw amendment on their behalf. I'm cognizant of the fact that staff will also be making a presentation this evening, so I plan to be brief and to the point. This slide provides some context for the development. The development rounds out the Windle Estates subdivision, which was developed in the early 2000s, and it's in the Thorold South urban area. The site is located on Hayes Road and is currently vacant without any significant vegetation. The City of Thorold's official plan designates the site for residential development, and the zoning bylaw also zones it for residential development. This is the development plan for 49 Hayes Road. The proposed development includes 53 two-story townhouses. All of the townhouses front on a new internal private road that connects to Hayes Road in two places. Each townhouse will have a garage and a driveway that will accommodate 2 parking spaces per unit. In addition, 18 visitor parking spaces will be provided within the site. Each townhouse will have a dedicated private backyard, and there will be a common amenity space that includes a dry pond to manage stormwater before it's discharged to the storm sewer. This site will be developed by way of a vacant land condominium. This means that each townhouse unit will have this means that each townhouse unit and a small front and rear yard will be privately owned and managed by the property owner. The internal private road, visitor parking, and common amenity areas will all be owned commonly by the residents of the development and be managed by a condominium corporation. That includes landscaping and snow clearing. Briefly, this slide is an architectural rendering of what the townhouses within the subdivision will look like. As you can see, they have a modern design with many windows, covered porches, and recessed garages. The garages within the development will all be twinned, which will provide for a maximization of the size of the landscape areas. The existing zoning on the site, as I mentioned, is a placeholder for future residential development. A zoning amendment is required to permit any form of development where a site is zoned neighborhood development, such as the case here. In this instance, the application is to amend the zoning to an R3 zone under the city's old bylaw and an R3D zone under the current and under appeal bylaw to permit the proposed private street development. A number of studies were completed in support of this development. Upper Canada Consultants completed a functional servicing and preliminary stormwater management study. This study assessed the development and associated demands on municipal water and sewer infrastructure relative to the available capacity. The report concludes that adequate capacity is available to accommodate this development. The city and region have both reviewed this study and have concurred with its findings. The functional servicing study also included a functional stormwater management report. This report includes a functional grading design that ensures that the site will continue to accommodate the drainage that it receives now. The design includes the use of a dry stormwater management facility that will control the rate of release of the stormwater from the site to pre-development levels before releasing it to an existing storm sewer. An environmental impact study was completed to assess the possible impact of the development on natural heritage features. The study concluded that the site did not contain any significant natural heritage features and that the development would not have any impact on natural heritage features in the area. The region and the MPCA have both indicated that they concur with the findings of this study. Lastly, a sensitive land use study was completed to assess the possible impacts of the railway and surrounding businesses on future residents in the development. The study generally concluded that with the incorporation of some enhanced building materials into the dwellings, that there would be no negative impact. The region of Niagara, as you'll hear, has requested some additional information regarding this analysis from the applicant. The applicant has since commissioned an addendum to this study, and the results of that addendum have already been provided to the region. My expectation is that we will have their concurrence before we are back in front of council for a recommendation. With that, I'll conclude my presentation, and I'd just like to sincerely thank council for their time this evening and let you know that I'm happy to answer any questions that there is of me. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, and I'll open the floor up for questions. I got Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to presenter. In regards to the enhanced building materials, I'm glad you actually brought that up. We had a development some time ago in the Port Robinson area. One of the complaints after the development had completed was that the window panes, double glass, triple glass, in regards to the vibration of the noise coming from the trains, will that be put into consideration, knowing now that the property's recently been purchased and they have an interconnection with the former paper mill, Absolute Paper Mill, so we know that I believe their intention is to use that rail line more frequently than they had in the past. So is that one of the enhanced building materials? And also, will there be a berm built or a sound barrier wall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So the noise assessment that was included with the sensitive land use study did include some projected traffic on the rail line. And there were specific recommendations with respect to enhanced glass thickness, as well as the soundproof nature of the building materials in terms of brick and insulation requirements for those dwellings.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Later, I'll ask staff in regards to the same question, but thank you for your response.
Go ahead, Councillor DeAngelo, and then Councillor O'Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of questions. One sort of piggybacking against Councillor Hanley's comments regarding the noise. Either a berm or a noise barrier will probably be built there. Is that going to be part of the condominium's responsibility to maintain in future years?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. If it turns out that a berm is the preferred way of mitigating that noise, that would be part of the condominium's responsibility to maintain and maintain that feature.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Mayor, just follow up. So, and then if a noise barrier was to be put up as maybe another option, again, my concern is if you put a barrier up there, sometimes they put a wooden barrier, it doesn't last very long, and then it falls onto the city's hands later. But you're sort of giving me the assurance that any type of berm or barrier is part of the condominium and will be responsible of the residents living in the condominium?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, absolutely. Any berm, any fence would all be on an area which is commonly owned by the residents and managed by the condominium corporation.
Okay, thank you. And then again, because I know Councillor Hanley and myself were on council when that development Port Robinson was built, and it was next to a shunting yard. And one of the things, I think there was some discussion, is there any opportunity through you, Mr. Mayor, to the presenter, to put any type of clause in the legal agreement to purchase so that the residents that do purchase it are fully aware that there is a train yard, or not a train yard, but a train rail line there that is potentially actively going to be used? Because I think that was one of the concerns the residents had in the past, was they weren't aware of that. And then what happens is they move in, and then it's now the city's responsibility to solve a problem. I'd rather have the problem solved in advance, knowing that if you're moving in, you have that barrier, and then you also have potential noise vibrations that you're going to have to deal with. Is that something that, through you, Mr. Mayor, that can be put into the clause of purchase, and that it maintains there so that a secondary purchaser would also be aware of that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's precisely the type of thing that can be implemented through the condominium agreement, which is the outcome of the plan of condominium process. So That is something which is done often, routinely through plans of condominium and plans of subdivision processes, so that is something that absolutely could be done.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Hare, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thank you for your presentation, Mr. Kernan. I just have a couple of questions. One is regarding the private roads. Are they unidirectional, or are these going to be two-way traffic roads?
Through Mr. Mayor, those are two-way traffic roads.
Okay, and in my reading, I saw that there was some question from staff regarding the dry pond. Has that been resolved, the location, and?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that question was a general one that supersedes this process. So as in the case with McDonald's, a site plan approval process will follow the zoning and the draft plan of vacant land condominium, and the precise design of that stormwater management facility and how it functions, that will all be worked out through the site plan approval process, which will be reviewed by Mr. Dunsmore's group.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And lastly is, I'd like to touch on the berm again. I believe on the roadway just to the south of the new proposed subdivision, there's a large berm there, and it does kind of make sense to me anyway to continue that berm all the way through. Is that something that has been discussed or looked at?
Through Mr. Mayor, on a preliminary basis, our noise assessment doesn't indicate that that is a requirement, but I am aware that there will likely be some additional study done with respect to noise as we move forward through the site plan approval process, and if that's something which makes sense, we can make sure that's implemented through that site plan approval process.
Good, thank you.
I got Councillor Sentence, go ahead, and then Councillor Lowe.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Just a couple questions that might concern the citizens in the area, and I'm not sure if they're for you or for staff, but are you planning on, I like it, I like to hear condominiums. That is a good word to me. Doesn't look like there's any interaction on other people's property, but I see on the one street here, you're backing onto other properties. Will you be putting fences up as you go? I don't know what's back there right now, so I really don't. Will you be putting fences up to alleviate the privacy concerns that the other citizens already there might have?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, it is typical that a fence would be provided around, at least three sides of the development, including where there's a back-to-back interface between the existing and the proposed units. And again, through you, Mr. Mayor, that's something which can be and will often be implemented through the site plan approval process.
Well, I hope that's in there to take away any stress they might have in there. The stormwater, I'm glad to hear about that. We keep putting stuff in Thorold South there into an already pretty heavily used system. I know we got a new one coming, but way in the future. I really hope that's looked at strongly to make sure that is that way. And again, going with our theme with McDonald's and everything, traffic. Is there a traffic study that's going to be done with this one? Now everybody's coming out on Hayes Road. And I'll tell you where I'm coming from with this. We've got new businesses popping up on there that are going to be using that road a lot. I tortured Mr. Holman and Mr. Sean a lot on this. Now we have all these new builds coming on. That road is going to become extremely busy. Are we doing a traffic study to see what we might need on that road? Especially Hayes, they're not used to any traffic on that road.
Yeah, so through Mr. Mayor, that road is pretty lightly used at the moment. I understand there's future traffic projected. Based on the 53 units or so that were proposed during the time of pre-consultation, again, staff didn't feel that was warranted. What I can tell you is that the comments we've received from staff on this application and even through pre-consultation was that there is a need to upgrade Hayes Road, and that my client, the developer, will be on the hook to do that as part of this development process. So the road itself will be approved and brought up to the City of Thorold's municipal standards for urban roads.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Councilor Longo, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the presenter. Just one question for you, sir. Looking at the plan here, are there any sidewalks inside this community?
Through Mr. Mayor, typically there are not sidewalks on a private road development such as this because it is private and it's not a through fare for residents who aren't part of that development.
Okay.
But again, you know, this development is subject to site plan approval and that could be added or implemented as.
Thank you. I'll just make a comment to you, and I'm sure people in condominiums walk also, so I don't know why it would be any different, but I'll bring that up with staff. Thank you.
Thank you. I had Councilor O'Hara. Do you have another question? And Councilor DeAngelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Kernan, just for my own sake, could you tell me approximately the square footage of the condo units?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, approximately 1,500 to 1,700.
Okay. So basement, ground floor, second floor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that'd be ground floor and second floor, not including basement.
Great. Thank you.
Councilor DeAngelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just when I look at the drawings here, the proposed dwellings, they actually have a sidewalk there and the picture of the condominium, and it looks like there's a garage and there's a car parked there. So they do show a sidewalk in the picture. But my question, that was a good one about the sidewalk, but my question is regarding vehicle traffic. Are those proposed dwellings, will they have a garage with, is that what they're gonna look like, is what's in that? Not specifically, but is the intent to have a garage there so that you can fit two vehicles? Looks like you could fit one in the driveway, one in the garage.
Through Mr. Mayor, absolutely, yes. The intent is that they each have a garage as well as a parking space in front of that garage for an additional vehicle.
Okay, and then the secondary one through Mr. Mayor, then in terms of the site plan, is there any opportunity to increase parking? There's 53 units, and I believe you mentioned that there's 18 visitor parking spots. So that's less than one parking spot visitor for each condominium there. Is there any opportunity to expand that so that you have additional parking spots? Because really there's going to be no availability on Hayes Road or in the nearby area to park, so that might be a little difficult. And the second one, has there been, or is it too early at this stage, through you, Mr. Mayor, is there a snow removal plan or a snow area plan? Because if you use parking spots up, then you'll have less visitor spots, and that may cause some more problems down the road. Because if the roads are narrow, you don't want people parking on the roads. Again, I know it's not city responsibility, but at the end of the day, if there's not enough parking there, it's going to affect the residents and the rest of the neighborhood. So maybe if I could have a couple shots at those questions.
So through Mr. Mayor, as a matter of fact, we actually are blessed with some additional space on this site, and earlier iterations of this plan had more parking for visitors than this iteration does. Certainly we can provide additional visitor parking spaces. That just comes at the expense of green space. So our first shot at it was 18. We thought that was a good balance, but if it's the wish of council, we can certainly increase that. I know for a fact that space is available to us. So to your second point, in terms of a snow clearing plan, my firm designs a lot of these vacant land condominiums, so it has been designed with snow clearing in mind. Storage is provided at the end of each of the private roadways to the, not sure if I'm totally oriented east and west here, but yes, at the east and west ends of those roadways, that's where snow would be stored.
That answers my questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, are there any further questions? Seeing none, I want to thank you, Matt, for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
And now we're going to move on to staff presentation. I'll call on Nick Bogart for the staff presentation respecting the zoning bylaw amendment application. Go ahead, Nick.
Hello again, Mr. Mayor and councilors. I will share my screen again. Got a short presentation about this application as well. And can everyone see that okay?
Yep, you're up. We can see.
Excellent. So good evening once again. Nick Bogart with MHBC. Going to do a short presentation about this proposal for a 53-unit townhouse development. Thank you, Matt, as well, for the presentation. You covered a lot of the points I'm covering as well, so I can be a little bit brief. This map just shows the location of the subject property. Matt covered the context quite well, but it's generally just outside the Pays Road. There's a CN rail corridor on the one side, Allenburg Road, just to the east. The property is about 4.5 acres total, frontage on Hayes Road. And then the proposal, which Matt walked everyone through for the site plan, but it's a condo townhouse development with private roads, providing area for stormwater and parking, and there's also some additional separation I was going to point out between the backyards of the properties and the rail line, so that provides a little bit more of a buffer to the rail and additional green space as well. So the application, the purpose of this public meeting was a zoning bylaw amendment. There was a related condo application that was mentioned as well. So the zoning bylaw amendment would permit the proposed development. There's some site-specific provisions to reflect the particulars of the site. And as Matt mentioned, there's amendments required to both the zoning bylaw 2140/97 and also 60-2019. Public notice for the application was provided by city staff in accordance with the Planning Act requirements. There was a public comment received requesting a higher resolution plan, just so they could better orient and look at the site details. There was also some questions from the same resident about drainage and how it might affect adjacent properties. And then there was clarification also sought regarding servicing. And city staff was able to provide some answers back to the resident on that. And then there was also additional questions since I did the report and this presentation. There was another community member who lives in the area, and their backyard backs onto this property. So they were also asking for a high resolution plan. And then actually there was an additional comment provided today, just asking about fencing. So it's good that Matt was able to clarify on that. And that is something we would look at through the site plan process. Department and agency comments. I just have a quick summary here. So these are the comments received through the circulation so far. No comments, no concerns from utilities, Bell Canada, Canada Post, Enbridge, Hydro One. Mississaugas of the credit request to be engaged if there's any field work for archaeology. There were no concerns from the Conservation Authority, which Matt had went over as well. And there was a request that site drainage be maintained and also implementing the recommendations as outlined in the EIS for the project. Additional comments, there were some comments received from CN. Matt did speak to them a little bit, but they recommended implementation of setbacks, also a requirement for fencing between the private property and the rail line. And then CN also did mention the warning clauses that would go on title and also in the condo implementation documents, just given the rail line proximity. And they did request the noise and vibration study, which they would peer review be peer reviewed on behalf of CN. And then Niagara Region, as Matt mentioned, there is a land use compatibility report, and that was provided. And the region was holding off their support for the application until they had received that and reviewed the document. So as mentioned, they have received that now, so they're reviewing and will provide comments in due course. And then comments from planning on our behalf. No concerns in principle with the proposal. We'll review the final materials, of course, related to the rail line and the compatibility, and then there'll be further processing through the site plan process and through the condo when those recommendations are developed and comes forward. And then the engineering department had provided some comments regarding the submitted drawings, and some of those will be addressed through site plan, and some will be addressed as this application finishes up. And then other comments, there were just no concerns from building or the fire department. So the purpose of tonight was to receive comments on the application. And once all the agency and public comments have been received, then we will prepare a recommendation report that will then be presented at a future council meeting. So that was all I had for this evening. Like the last one, if you have any questions or comments, let me know. I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, and I'll open the floor for questions. Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the staff representative, the staff present. We had built combined sewer overflow tanks in order for the Rolling Meadows subdivision to proceed. Do we know that with building this subdivision, there will not be a capacity or a surcharge where that we're going to experience flooding in the Thorold South area? I know we've done extensive studies. We probably spent about $4.5 million or $5 million from what I researched in rectifying infill watering systems.
Do you want Sean Dunsmore, manager engineering, can answer that?
Yeah, it's just that my concern is that we approved the Rolling Meadows plan and subdivision on a limit of capacity, and the new station will not be probably ready where we can discharge into the Niagara Falls and the Browns Road area till 2026, maybe 2027 or later, depending on construction build. And we've had problems with the sewer overflow in the past in that area. So is there any guarantee that what we do there, our combined sewer overflow tanks will be able to hold that subdivision as well as the subdivision for which the proponent paid for those surcharges at Rolling Meadows? I know it's kind of complex, but it's been a big issue out there.
Sean will answer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, through that process of wet weather removal and so forth, we've replaced quite a few sewers in that area, as well as adding that CSO tank. And all our studies to date say that there is enough capacity to hold all the development that's happening in that area. The CSO tank itself is being utilized to help mitigate some of the, there's actually 2 CSO tanks out there, to mitigate some of the surcharging that happens in the area. But it's rare at this point in time, and we believe we have more than a 5-year design storm or 5-year overflow storm in our system that we can accommodate. So we don't believe it's going to significantly increase that risk.
One follow-up, if I could, please. I know that the siphon under the canal was built in the 1930s. From what I can find, what I've been able to find out, it's only running right now at 40% capacity. Are we looking to increase that at all? Because the reason they never increased it in the past, they said because downflow, but I know that a significant amount of combined sewer overflow tanks have been put in St. Catharines. Are we looking to use that as an option if we do have flooding problems with the current development? Is the region considering that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, upgrading the system to accommodate the wet weather flow is not a consideration that the region will identify. They will not allow that to happen because exactly what you said, it'll just flood out St. Catharines down below the hill. But as I said before, we don't foresee it as a significant problem.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Sentence, go ahead. I don't know if you're going as in Nick or Sean.
Sean, if I could, please.
Sean's on the hot seat now.
Sorry, Sean. Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's a question, and they know the question. I'll say it again. As the companies come on board, as this comes on board, that I wasn't really aware was coming on board until recently, I really think a traffic study should be done on Allenberg Road and in the area, and sooner rather than later. It is a very busy place, and the residents have said this so before, but I would love it if we could look into, before this goes in, if we could put something there. And I know I've said that to you before, so I apologize. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, is your concern Allenberg Road or is it Hayes Road?
My concern is going to be Hayes as well as Allenberg, because everything is going to flow out to Allenberg. And I'm hoping in the future that the new development up at Hayes goes elsewhere, but it will depending what happens at Georgia Pacific, that road traffic will increase just by, what'd we say, the 53 times 2, yeah, like you'll have a lot of vehicles coming in and through there. So I'd say Allenberg Road, but Hayes, the whole area. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to staff, it's not a question at this point, just a comment. It's my comment about sidewalks. When this report comes back, I'd like an explanation on sidewalks, and hopefully they're being included in this development. I think that's something we need to do in every development.
So Jason's going to capture that, correct, Jason? Your group?
Great.
In working with probably engineering. Yeah.
Thank you. And my next question to the appropriate staff member talks about urbanization of Hayes Road in the report on a cost-sharing basis with the developer in the city. So my question may be to the Director of Finance. Would this be done through development charges?
Through Mr. Mayor, again, we'd have to have a look at the definition of local services and what is and isn't included in the background study.
Okay, thank you. So it's not there, so we would have to see if we could add it. So I guess a question maybe when this report comes back, I don't expect anybody to answer it now, but with the new Bill 23, is it? I lose track of numbers, where there'll be no more development charges potentially. Can I get an explanation in the report how the city would pay for urbanizing a road for a developer to put in a new development? Does that make sense?
You see where you're heading with that?
Yeah, you see where I'm heading?
Yep.
Good.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd like an explanation on how, I guess, we're to fund infrastructure with new rules. Thank you.
We'll take that and do note. And I think that gets complicated because development charges aren't going to be withdrawn on all developments. It's, so we need to get more information back on that as well. So.
Right. So yeah. I'll make a comment that, growth needs to pay for growth, and the existing residents in Thorold should not have to pay to urbanize a road to make growth happen.
That's
so
right. Well,
somebody's got to explain it.
Yep. So we'll get those answers. Go ahead, Councillor DeAngelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just going back to Councillor Sentence question about the traffic study, is that something that's going to be included in this report coming forward, that we're going to be doing one? I just don't want it falling off the table. And the secondary point to that traffic study, if we're moving forward with it, I'd like to also see if we need to institute a community safety zone where the school is, because that could be critical too, based on the traffic study. So I want to make sure, if we're moving forward with a traffic study, that we go further than that and do the assessment for the community safety zone if need be.
Good point. Sean, did you get that information so that you can respond to that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we can certainly talk to the developer as well as any type of input that we have to have on the whole deal, and maybe a budget issue for us as well.
Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor O'Hare.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to staff, I'm just wondering if we look at this entire lot, we can see that it's very much focused on housing. Great. I support that. Can we also have a little bit of a report back to us regarding the green spaces that will be available and what can be done to take advantage of that to the benefit of the neighborhood?
I think that would be part of site plan. Am I correct, Jason?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the site plan would look at this specific property, this development. I believe what Councillor O'Hare is asking for is for the neighborhood in its entirety. If Councillor O'Hare could clarify that, please.
Just the new subdivision as we're looking at it right now, the 53 condominiums. And I can see that there is some space, there's some larger back lots there. are a couple of locations at the end of some of the condos. I'm just wondering if staff could also look at how to utilize the space and make suggestions as to how we can get some planting in there and how we can get some green space and trees.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Landscaping is definitely a required part of the site plan and condominium process, and that would definitely be reviewed by staff.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any further questions? Seeing none, thank you, Dick, for your presentation. And
Thank you,
now,
Mr. Mayor.
we're going to move on to registered speakers. Up first is Jeff Trudel, resident. I'll call on Jeff as a registered to speak to the application. Please provide your full name and address for the public record. Please note you have maximum 5 minutes to address council. Is Jeff there?
All right, I should be unmuted.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
No, we can hear you now. Jeff, give your full name and address,
All right.
please.
My name is Jeff Trudell. I reside at 134 Window Village Crescent. I'm one of the original owners for 25 years here. I understand the development behind us on this 1.5 acres of once green space, swampy area property. I'm listening to everybody. There's so many concerns. The noise with the railway has been going through here for years with the old Hayes Dana. The house still vibrates when these new trains go through, never mind the bolts. Are the people going to be buying these houses, are they aware that HOPA, this infrastructure, is going to be running up and down their street constantly? Another concern is they had mentioned about a fence to be erected for some privacy or create some kind of breezeway in between. I've looked at this property for 25 years. In 1.5 acres, there used to grow honeybees back there. I know they've done the studies, and I understand it's not what it is nowadays, what they consider it, but still 53 townhouses in 1.5 acres. I don't know, I'm confused. And in regards to the traffic up the street, 3 major accidents, Fire Station 2 at Allenberg Road and Highway 58, due to the congestion of the houses being built on the other side of the jail. It's just a straight stop sign, and you have to just go. I'm sure it's probably in the works to get stoplights there. The school down the street, there's always an issue with speeders down there and the kids. Yeah, it's frustrating to say the least. But my concern is we've got to have some kind of proper drainage as well. I've got footage. I could literally put my canoe in the backyard at times when we get heavy rainfall. Our grade of property right now is almost 3 feet higher is where the proposed development is going to be. So how are they going to incorporate this sewer system on an old swampy area?
Thank you, Jeff. Do you have any further comments before I open the floor for questions?
No, I don't. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And are there any questions for Jeff? Seeing none. Jeff, thank you for your presentation, and your staff has duly noted your points that you brought up, and I appreciate you coming to council this evening.
Great. Thank you very much, Mayor. Have a great evening.
And up next, we have a second resident, Dave Lampman. And I'll call on Dave as a registered speaker. Please give your full name and address, and please note you have 5 minutes maximum to address council. Dave, are you there? Is he there? Dave, are you there? Is he muted? Dave, can you hear me? You're muted. If you can unmute, we'll be able to hear you.
No, sorry, I'm good. I just wanted to attend the meeting. I didn't mean to become a speaker.
No, that's fine. Did you want to speak at all, or you?
No, thank you.
Okay, I appreciate you listening and listening to the comments and the planning reports.
All right, thank you.
Okay. At this time, is there anyone else online or present in the chamber who wishes to speak on this application? Is there anyone else?
There are others online. I don't know if they want to speak or not.
Oh. Jeff spoke. We
Counselor?
Yes, go ahead.
Mayor, I would just like to add, in regards to that fencing, that's Jeff Trudell, by the way, at Window Village.
Yeah.
If it is to be made part, would like to be made part of the site plan. You know, I spoke to the residents on Window Village, something that's incorporated and something that makes these future potential buyers aware of the actual industry that is going to be revolved around them on a 24/7, 365-day basis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Jeff. We've noted those points as well.
Thank you.
At this time, is there anyone else online or present in the chamber who wishes to speak on the application? Do we have anyone else?
I see a Dylan Earl online, Mr. Mayor. Dylan, if you're here to speak, you can unmute now.
Hi, I'm here unrelated to that application, but here with Ken Schultens for something later on.
Thank you. Okay. I'll read it one more time. At this time, is there anyone else online or present in the chamber who wishes to speak to this application? Okay. Now, a planning report 731 DS4 2023. Is the report coming?
Just for information.
Just for information, this report. Can I get a mover or seconder for the report? Councillor Sentence is a mover. Councillor Hanley is a seconder. This report is for information. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Adjournment of the statutory public meeting. This fulfills the requirements of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13, pursuant to Section 34. The recommendation report for this application will be brought forward at a future meeting of council. The public meeting portion of this application is now closed. Okay, back to the main agenda. Up first is the mayor's report. On January 19th, I attended Brian Davies, CEO of Bethesda, retirement dinner held at the Holiday Inn Hotel and Conference Center in St. Catharines. Brian had 37 years of service with Bethesda, 27 years as Chief Executive Officer. As he said many times, Bethesda has and continues to put people first. It's our passion, our priority. We in the city of Thorold have seen firsthand with Bethesda's commitment not only to our city, but across the Niagara region. On behalf of City Council, all the best in your retirement. February is Black History Month. The 2023 theme for Black History Month is Ours to Tell. This theme represents an opportunity to engage in open dialogue and commitment to learning more about the stories Black communities in Canada have to tell about their histories, successes, sacrifices, and triumphs. We invite our residents to learn more about these communities and how they continue to help shape Canadian history. Please visit our website and Facebook page for ways to learn and get involved links. Wednesday, February 22nd is Pink Shirt Day in recognition of Anti-Bullying Day. Now a movement across the globe inspired by moments of kindness, empathy, and understanding. We encourage everyone to wear pink to symbolize a stance against bullying and send a strong message of support, which can make a world of difference. February 25th is the annual Coldest Night of the Year walk, a family-friendly walk to raise money for local charities serving people who are experiencing hurt, hunger, and homelessness. By walking in the cold, you will feel a hint of the challenge faced by those experiencing homelessness during the winter. By fundraising, you will be contributing much-needed money to a local charity that is bringing hope and help to people in your community who need support. Participants can register to walk 2 kilometers or 5 kilometers in the main event leaving from Market Square in St. Catharines or make a donation. For more information, please visit cnoy.org. That's cnoy.org. James Simons is leading his Toolbox Niagara team during the Coldest Night of the Year walk to raise funds for Start Me Up Niagara, a local organization offering programs for people facing poverty and homelessness. Niagara's biennial Design Awards were held on January 17th, the evening of our previous council meeting. The City of Thorold received 2 awards. An Outstanding Achievement Award in the Architecture category was presented for the Walker Sports and Ability Center to the City of Thorold, City of St. Catharines, Niagara Region, and Brock University. An Outstanding Achievement Award in the Visionary Design category was presented to the City of Thorold for the Port Robinson Ecological Park Conceptual Master Plan. On January 26, CAO Manoj Dalwaria, Director of Public Works and Community Services Jeff Holman, and I met with representatives from Hydro One to discuss hydro service issues affecting the City of Thorold, outages, upgrades to the distribution system, etc. It was a very productive meeting with a follow-up meeting planned later this month. On January 26, CAO Manoj Dalwari and I attended the Once and For All wrap-up presentation of the very successful Niagara 2022 Canada Summer Games held at the Walker Sports and Ability Center. It was a good news story which was widely reported in the media. The Darlene Ryan Port Robinson Community Center is hosting its annual Family Day Pasta Dinner fundraiser on Monday, February 20th. Proceeds from this event go towards upgrades and beautification of the community center. There are 2 sittings, 4:30 to 5:30 and 6 to 7 p.m., as well as takeout. For more information and to purchase tickets, please visit the Darlene Ryan Port Robinson Community Center Facebook page. City staff has put together a team that will represent the City of Thorold at this weekend's Mayor's Cup Hockey Tournament during Sports Fest in Port Colborne. The tournament runs Friday, February 10th to Sunday, February 12th at the Vale Center. Good luck and bring home some hardware. On Saturday, February 11th, the Thorold Senior Citizens Association will be hosting their very first Valentine Vendor Fair. This event will take place at the Thorold Senior Center from 9 a.m. till 2 p.m. Our thoughts and prayers are with everyone affected by the major earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. Our heartfelt condolences go out to those who have lost loved ones during this terrible event. On behalf of City Council and staff, a safe and happy Family Day weekend to all. Enjoy a wonderful long weekend with your families. And that's the end of my mayor's report. Up next, we have presentation, and that presentation is Bell Canada Fiber to Home Project. Oh, it's been withdrawn. So I read that, and now I got to say that one's been withdrawn. Okay. I'll move on to delegations. Report DS8 2023 respecting the Partners for Climate Protection Program financial considerations. And Ron Devereaux, resident is here for a delegation, and we'll have him do his presentation before we bring the report on the floor. And I'll call on Ron Devereaux for his delegation. Please state your name and address, and then we'll open the floor to questions for Ron after his presentation. Welcome, Ron.
Sorry, Ron, can you just turn the microphone on?
Want me to repeat that?
Please.
My name is Ron Devereaux. I live at 43 South Street North in Port Robinson, Ontario. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here. Information in tonight's report to Council recommending for Thorold to join the United Nations Partners for Climate Protection is heavily sourced from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, known as the IPCC. Thank you, Mayor Ugolini and Council and City staff for the opportunity to talk about earth science, carbon dioxide, and the IPCC. As children, we were told to always tell the truth. So when we heard national politicians, the news media, and the International United Nations say anything, as children, we automatically believed they always told the truth too. Then as a young adult, through further education, I learned that there was something called common sense, logical, rational, objective, critical thinking, which is the basis of the real scientific method and the basis of real scientific research. I have decided to explain the massive subject of climate change by talking about parts per million, percentages, and by mentioning whiskey and elephants. Observation: nowhere in the council report tonight does it say how much carbon dioxide the city of Thorold is actually being asked to reduce. So let's figure it out. Real science climate facts. The total concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere is 406 parts per million. That's only 4/100ths of 1% of all the gases in the atmosphere. That's a very teeny tiny amount. CO2 is only a trace gas. 97% of all atmospheric carbon dioxide actually comes from natural sources. Only 3% comes from human activity by the world's 8 billion people. 3% concentration equals only 12 parts per million. All of Canada's 38 million people collectively emit only 1.6% of that 12 parts per million. That equals 1/5 of 1 part per million, which therefore equals 1 part per 5 million. That's a very teeny tiny amount also. On the world stage, Canada is only a bit player in the amount of carbon dioxide emissions by humans. A way to demonstrate this is if you put a glass of 5 million drops of water, if you have a glass of 5 million drops of water and you put 1 drop of whiskey into the water, would you be able to taste the whiskey? Absolutely not. Quoting from the report to Council, in 2016, Canada set an ambitious climate target of 40 to 45% emissions reduction by 2030. End quote. Rounding that up to 50%, that means Canada wants all of its population to collectively cut their national emissions of carbon dioxide in half to 1 part per 10 million. That's even a tinier, negligible amount. This is supposed to be a voluntary national goal, but they're using the carbon tax to make it mandatory. That's the equivalent of killing a fly by using an elephant to stomp on it. Special note, and Thorold's 25,000 population is a very teeny tiny percentage of Canada's 38 million people. The Partners for Climate Protection program comprises 5 milestones for the next 10 years. It will require a constant, ongoing, open-ended, endless commitment of city staff hours, and to me, it sounds like a horrendously costly financial black hole. And it will be. for negligible climate benefit. Always remember the popular saying, it's never about the original cost, it's always about the cost of the long-term upkeep. We constantly hear high-profile politicians say that Canada will always follow the science, yet they fumble and contradict what real science says. For example, no branch of real legitimate mainstream science has ever declared that there's a climate emergency, climate crisis, or climate existential threat to humanity. No branch of real legitimate mainstream science labels carbon dioxide as pollution. It's a beneficial atmospheric gas. Actually, it's atmospheric plant fertilizer in all food, vital to the existence of all plants in all food chains, and therefore essential to all life on Earth. More carbon dioxide actually makes the Earth greener by increasing plant growth and crop yields to feed more people. So why is the IPCC preaching to reduce it? So when anyone calls carbon dioxide pollution, they are deliberately spreading misinformation. Real legitimate mainstream science has identified there are 22 factors that drive climate on Earth, and they are totally out of man's ability to control them. These 22 climate drivers operate continuously according to their own natural processes and on varying cycles, not synchronized or in harmony with each other. For this reason, Earth's climate is always naturally changing, and therefore it is not stable to begin with. Earth science facts: the sun is 1.3 million times larger than the Earth. That's very big. 99.9% of the energy that drives the weather on the Earth comes from the sun. The sun's heat varies according to the cycles of sunspots. The Earth wobbles on its axis, and the Earth's orbit is elliptical, not a perfect circle. And I haven't even mentioned the Earth's tilt, albedo, cosmic rays, volcanism, ocean currents, and the plate tectonics of the Earth's crust. There have been 5 ice ages in the Earth's natural history. Despite continuous requests to publish their evidence, the IPCC cannot explain how the Earth warmed up so much after each ice age, long before there were humans on Earth burning fossil fuels. The answer is it was the sun and combinations of the natural processes I just mentioned. So despite all of these real science facts, why is the IPCC's focus on the 3% of all atmospheric CO2 that comes from human activity? Attacks on the formation of uncontrollable sunspots would have as much effect on the climate as the horrendous cost that the carbon tax has on a minuscule amount of carbon dioxide. Around the world, the invalid pseudoscience peddled by the IPCC is causing trillion-dollar bankrupting decisions on energy policies. I repeat, this is all for negligible environmental benefits. The United Nations and the IPCC are not branches of real science, nor are they accredited scientific institutions. The IPCC's climate models have proven to be total failures. Here is real solid evidence that the IPCC information about their climate change efforts has been going on for over a decade. When they say it in their own words from their own mouth, it's not a conspiracy theory. Conspiracy theory. Quote of IPCC co-chairman Ottmar Edenhofer, November 18th, 2010. One must say that we distributed de facto the world's wealth by climate policy. One has to free oneself from the illusion that international climate policy is environmental policy. This has almost nothing to do with environmental policy anymore, end quote. So I'm here to emphasize the IPCC is not an objective objective science assessment organization. It's an authoritarian political advocacy organization. Its climate reports repeatedly ignore real published scientific research. The costs of IPCC climate recommendations are far higher, and the benefits are extremely far lower than they claim. Reliance on the IPCC's climate advice is bad advice. When the IPCC says that, quote, climate change is a pressing issue devastating the environment as well as humanity, end quote, it is severely spreading misinformation.
Ron, you have 1 minute left, so
Okay.
I'm just giving you the warning.
Sorry. It is severely spreading misinformation, fear-mongering, and guilt-mongering to the maximum. The IPCC misleads way more than it informs. The Partners of Climate Protection Organization is comprised of over 500 participating municipalities across Canada. Your decision tonight should not be about keeping up with the Joneses, who are running other municipalities who didn't do their homework. Any subjective fish can float downstream with the crowd. Please be a strong, live, objective fish and swim against the current. Please reject joining the Partners for Climate Protection Organization of the IPCC.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'll open the floor for any questions for Mr. Devereaux. Is there any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Dibonite.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Dever, for coming here. But where did you get your information on back then? Is this all your opinion?
So this
Did
information.
you read this on the internet?
This information is available online. I have a science background. I am familiar with and know where to find good, reliable science information. For example, there's a site called Principia Scientific. Basically, the sites that I look for are the ones that, as I say, are accredited science sites. Many of them act as clearinghouses for, much like Reader's Digest was a clearinghouse. These sites act as clearinghouses so that I don't have to go to each individual site. I can go to these main sites, and they have the clearinghouse. They've done their research. These articles have to meet real science standards to be published in the first place.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Ron, thanks for the presentation. Very educational. I know you're very proficient in this field, and thank you for coming to enlighten us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
No questions, but comments when the report comes to the floor.
Absolutely. Yep, the report, we'll bring the report. If there's no more questions, that'll be the next. There are no more questions. Thank you so much, Mr. Devereaux, for coming and presenting to council.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay. DS 8, 2023, the Partners for Climate Change Program, CPC, financial considerations. Can I get a mover and a seconder for report DS 8, 2023? I have a mover, Councillor Decker, and a seconder, Councillor Sentence. And now, who's bringing that to the, I'll get Jason Simpson to put the report on the floor, and then we'll open it for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendations of this report are one, that report DS 8, 2023, dated February 7th, 2023, regarding the Partners for Climate Protection Program financial considerations be received. 2, that the City of Thorold's participation in the PCP program be approved. And 3, that council appoint an elected official as a joint contact alongside an assigned planning staff member for PCP program updates and plan endorsement. And that concludes the recommendations of this report.
Thank you very much, Jason. I'll open the floor for questions. Go ahead, Councillor Hanlon.
I know that I had asked for this to be brought back for discussion in the budget meetings, and it's been pushed up to this. And it's been mentioned that there's legislation. Can I ask why council never received a copy of the actual legislation in print? I'm not saying that the legislation isn't there, but I know that in the past, council's been told items that weren't a fruition, and we're here tonight to make a decision. From what I read, it's being kind of said that it's being legislated to it and that we have to do it. But yet only 500 municipalities across Canada are part of it. So is it legislated, or is this something that we're doing voluntarily?
Go ahead, Jason.
And if it's so legislated, why weren't we presented a copy of the legislation?
Through the mayor, thank you for the question. So joining the PCP is not legislated. However, it is legislated within the Planning Act as well as other provincial legislation that, when taking into consideration planning functions or planning recommendations, that the impact on the environment and resilience to climate change be taken into consideration. Should council have a desire to receive a copy of the Planning Act, then I'd certainly be happy to provide that to them.
Secondly, can I ask, I thought maybe when I read this, that maybe this should have been brought forward as a committee of council as we do our Port Robinson committees, our housing committee. Seeing that we're into an environmental change, instead of using staff time, we could seek out the public. But if I can I comment now, or do I have to wait, or?
Report's on the floor, so you can comment.
So I want to comment. I'm not in support of joining the Partners for Climate Protection. I've done a significant amount of research. I just want to say, Ron, you're not a conspiracy theorist. I agree with you. I've done a lot of research myself. And like you, when people view their personal opinions and it doesn't go with the flow, you're considered a conspiracy theorist. I just want to say I don't consider you a conspiracy theorist. I appreciate everything you've done. The PCI, Partners for Climate Protection, if you looked up their site, it actually states to help communities across Canada better understand and employ these concepts, the Partners for Climate Protection PCP program from ICLEI Canada. See, that's the catch, is ICLEI Canada. Remember, there's only 500 municipalities across Canada. And I don't know if you know what the ICLEI is, but it's actually a organization that is closely associated with the World Economic Forum. And their funding partner for the ICLE is a real estate foundation of BC. And one of the biggest ones in the United States, my concern is the BlackRock owner, who is one of the biggest real estate holders in the US. He was named to the board of trustees, and they believe in Klaus Schwab's theory, you will own nothing and be happy. And you can check yourself. PCP is solely funded by the ICLEI, who is funded by Google and many other multi-billion-dollar corporations. They support UN climate change, biological diversity, and combat desertification. But that's talking about an alternative farming, alternative livelihoods. They talk about eating crickets, mealworms, among other edible insects. They actually say right in their literature, we influence sustainable policy and drive local action for low emissions, nature-based. They put that right in it. That's what their objectives are. It's part of the World Economic Forum, equitable, resilient, and circular development. But the one thing is that when you go to the ICLE's website, who funds the group that we're asking to join today, their first heading is non-governmental organization. It's private driven. And just to let council know that the ICLEI Secretary General had and has been appointed the World Economic Forum's Council on Urbanization. So that concerns me, is that when they mention about how in their things, as I mentioned, equitable, resilient, and circular development, and I look at, and they proudly say we influence. And you look at influence as potential influence, domineering influence, and interpersonal influence. And influence is the power to change, affect something or something. And they openly admit that's what their objective and their goal is. They talk about circular. Well, circular of an argument is already containing an assumption that what is to be proved and therefore fallacious based on mistaken belief. They promote that. It's all in their literature, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Any member of council can go on. You go to Partners for Climate Protection, it'll take you to who they fund or by, ICLEI. And fallacious is a circular argument, also known as circular reasoning, is considered a logical fallacy because when you make this type of argument, you aren't supporting your claim with logic. Instead of using your claim to prove that the premise for the claims are true. And the World Economic Forum, it's, if you go through it, it's open. Like Ron says, you can go on to headers, you can get all the information. This is on their own website. And they actually say that their granting scheme is conducted. And they have another side to them. It's called the ICLEI Action Fund. That's where they get their money. See, their money comes from Google and Pfizer and all these other high-tech corporations, people that I wonder, as a Canadian, I actually have to ask myself, why are these companies involved in the most pressing world issues? What's their goal? And I'm not a conspiracy theory. I think it's control and power. That's what the world's coming to. But their fund, as they admit, is a granting scheme for local governments. And a granting scheme is a large-scale systematic plan or arrangement for attaining a particular object or putting a particular area into
1 minute left.
effect.
Okay.
Okay. So I just, that's why I can't support joining this organization. I can't. I've researched it. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I've done like Ron has done, and I believe that each and everyone should have their own opinion and be able to say what they feel that they believe in. So at this time, I cannot support joining the Partners for Climate Protection because the biggest thing is at the end of the day, their leader says you will own nothing and be happy. And I can't support that.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. I had Councillor O'Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I just want to comment, I have just one fact, and I think it says it all. It's a fact that states in 2020, direct industrial greenhouse gas emissions accounted for 24% of total U.S. greenhouse gas emissions. And this is from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. This isn't a quack institute. These are facts, and these are things that we have to recognize. I fully support joining the PCP program. I think this is our future that we have to be looking out for. This is something that will give tools to staff to help guide the direction whereby greenhouse gases can be reduced through our throughout our city. So, short and brief. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sentence.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some good arguments, good information. I'll just give my personal opinion, as we all have the right to give our opinion. I believe there is a climate problem. I believe we should be trying to leave this world better when we leave it for our kids and their kids. I'm a visual person. You see the glaciers, you see other things. I have not done the research that you guys have done, but I believe there is a problem. This is a free tool to bring back recommendations that we don't have to take or pay for at that point. And my personal opinion is that we do have a problem. There's 8 billion people. There's an overpopulation problem, and if each municipality, each person, everybody did their part, maybe it would get better. That's my personal opinion. So if it's a free tool to get into this and just bring back recommendations, I will support going into this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make a comment. My concern is that taxpayers will have to deal with the financial consequences of not knowing the long-term effects of this endeavor and what this report proposes. We already pay for federal government's climate change initiatives every time we put on our heat in our homes, fill up our cars, or buy goods and services. We pay for provincial climate initiatives through our provincial taxes. We pay for the region's climate initiatives as they're part of this through our property taxes. I feel that when I read this report, I read it 3 times, and every time it was trying to make me feel guilty, even though Thorold has done their part and already taken serious environmental initiatives over the years. Case in point is a $200,000 electric Zamboni we purchased, and other environmental initiatives that have been mentioned to me over the years. Where's this report taking us? In my opinion, this initiative will lead us to being told we will need to replace all gas-powered vehicles within our city fleet with electric ones. The cost will be unbearable for property owners as far as property taxes go. When I asked staff yesterday as to how much this would cost, how much changing over to electric vehicles would cost, they did not have that information because and I just wanted a ballpark figure. There's no way they could figure it out. How is that going to work for the fire trucks and other emergency vehicles? Would you want to trust an electric vehicle to save your life? This report also cites and criticizes fertilizer usage as something we have to change it, so they want to minimize farmers' fertilizer. Tell that to our farmers that are trying to do their part by growing and creating a local food chain supply. So the downside of that is we reduce fertilizer usage and transport food from halfway around the world from a place that doesn't handicap their farmers. The city of Thorold does not manufacture goods. Our emissions are negligible. The irony is that Thorold taxpayers are going to be on the hook for initiatives that will not improve the climate one bit. We are expanding the HOPA corridor with industries that are emitting gases into the atmosphere. We're supporting development to the point where we brag that we're the 4th fastest growing city in Ontario, 8th fastest in Canada, but not one word or concern by anyone on the environmental damage that all this development is creating. Additionally, farmland is being destroyed as we speak. This report cites the United Nations and has tentacles attached to the World Economic Forum, probably the 2 most corrupt entities in the world. And that's who this report is asking us to trust and join up with. An ironic example of do as I say, not as I do, is the Paris 2016 Climate Accord, which is cited in the report. It sets targets that are unachievable by 2030. But the elites that travel to Paris are giving themselves pats on the back and emitting more greenhouse gases at that one conference than the municipality of Thorold will emit in the next 100 years. Ironically, we didn't do our due diligence and allowed a developer to destroy our infamous frog pond without council being made aware. Now we're presented with a report that tries to persuade council that Thorold's climate initiatives will be felt across Canada. I don't believe that for a second. My main concern is the number of staff time that will be needed over the next 10 years to work on the 5 milestones. Correct me if I'm wrong, but staff doesn't have the answers. We don't know. It's an unknown. The report is flawed, and I believe parts of it were provided to our planning staff by outside entities. In closing, how efficient and how reliable will our city's services be delivered using a horse and buggy in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeRose. Is there anyone else that wants to speak to this report? You've spoken. I'm going to go over here first to Councillor Deck.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the appropriate staff. It says that it's a tool so that you can access resources. Jason, are you obligated to stay in this? Are you obligated to stay in this initiative? Like, can you get out anytime you want if you feel like the tool isn't providing you the resources that you need or that you thought maybe that it would provide to you?
Through the mayor to Councillor Decker, municipalities who opt in to join the group do have the ability to opt out at any time.
Okay, and it costs, and once again, it's just a tool to use to provide resources to help, like you said, with the planning department. But if you feel the tool is not providing you what you need, then you can leave at any time.
Through the mayor, that was the intentions of staff, was just to utilize the tools for some of the work that need to be undergone.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Is there anyone else before I will go back to Councillor Hanley? Go ahead, Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make it clear I'm not against greenhouse initiatives. Councillor Henry D'Angelo will attest to this. I was going to bring all the newspaper articles with me tonight. Henry was elected mayor in 2006. In 2008, I brought an initiative to the city in regards to replacing our lighting at the arena. I give them initiative. I even introduced a lot of businesses downtown to a free program where they could get lighting. Club Capri actually took a benefit of it. The city didn't take me up on my initiative to get rid of the halogen light bulbs and that stuff and go into high efficiency incandescent lighting. We could go from 480 watt bulbs to 250 watt bulbs. City didn't take my initiative then. I was going to bring a newspaper article. I was actually standing on a pile of wood chips at the Thorold Public Works building when we had recognized that in the future we could have a potential for 2,500 dead ash trees in Thorold. And I proposed that when back then, that's how long it took to do this operational building, that we could actually instill a kiln that burns wood chips, the same business right now that is running in that hopper at the old paper mill there, at the Resolute paper mill. I'll bring you the newspaper articles. I brought that to council in 2008 and said, you know what? We can reduce greenhouse gases back then. We can put a kiln that can hold 14 days worth of chips, and we can burn our own wood chips from all the trees that are going to be done in the city of Thorold. And they didn't take me up in the initiative. But now it's a global agenda. It's different. And if you want, I'll present you with all newspaper articles. If I had the time, I was going to go to the St. Catherine Standard. And Henry took initiative of it, and he installed solar panels on his house. He was one of the first ones that probably initiated it and took part in it when you could actually get paid. It was like 80 cents, and then it went down to 56 cents per kilowatt hour. So don't get me wrong, I'm not against greenhouse gases. I recognized it was there almost 2 decades ago, and council neglected to do anything about it. What I'm against is joining something that is now a global initiative, and the person that's promoting it is, like I said, believes in you own nothing and be happy. That's mine, and I'm not against it. So I just want to make that sound. I'm not against greenhouse gases or say that climate isn't changing.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there anyone else that wants to speak? Go ahead, Councillor O'Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say one small thing, and that is that this program doesn't cost us anything. And we are not bound by any suggestions that we discover through utilizing these tools that will be available to us. But if in any small way it's able to reduce our electrical costs, it's able to reduce our heating usage, then through some small measure, wouldn't we want that? Not just for cost savings, but also to reduce the greenhouse gases. So as I say, we're not bound by it, but it is a tool, regardless of who it's from, that we can utilize.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor DeRose.
For you, Mr. Mayor, to the manager of building. Jason, are you able to tell us over the next 10 years to reach the 5 milestones, what it's going to cost us in staff time, of course?
Through the mayor, that analysis has not been identified, nor has it been identified that Thorold would even be striving for those 5 milestones. That would be a council decision. Right now, we're just looking to join to gain access to those free tools.
So you can't tell us a projected cost?
Yeah, through the mayor, I wouldn't be able to tell you a projected cost or if there would be any cost at all.
There wouldn't be any cost at all. Well, how staff's going to be working on the milestones. It seems like an incredible amount of time. So I disagree with that. I think it will cost a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before the report gets voted on? Go ahead, Councillor Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to really speak on this. I have quite a bit of questions and some comments, but I'd rather, because I haven't spoken, I'd like to defer this to the Climate Change and Biodiversity Advisory Committee. I think they can have a good discussion there and bring back some thoughtful information. That's my suggestion, so I'm going to be deferring it. I know there's some people for it, people against it, but I think we set up these committees. Let's utilize some resources of the members that sit on these committees. So that's mine. I know Councillor O'Hare is on that committee.
So you're asking to defer it, so there'll be no debate on that. Do I have a seconder? And defer it to that committee.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Can I get a seconder? I've got Councillor DeRose. There's no debate on that. It's referring this to the appropriate committee, which is.
Yeah, it's the Environment, Climate Change, and Biodiversity Advisory Committee.
Okay. There's no debate. All those in favor? What? All those in favor? Opposed? I'm opposed.
You're opposed?
Yeah. Okay, so now we can go back and talk to the report. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Lawler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make a few comments. I didn't support that deferral because it's going to go to a committee, obviously, that's concerned about the environment. And my feeling is they're just going to come back and say, go ahead and do it. So there's been a lot of discussion tonight. It doesn't cost anything. It's tools. At any time in the future, we can opt out if we wish. And if budget requirements come to council or a budget meeting, we can turn it down and throw the program out. So I understand there's a lot of passion here. There's people that say it's not a conspiracy theory, yet we're worried about large international companies. I just think we need to, in my opinion, it costs nothing. Take it and see if it's of value. If it's not, get rid of it. But again, the reason I didn't go for the deferral was, what's the point? It's like asking the Pope if we should go to church. Like, really? So.
Okay. Is there anyone else further that wants to speak to the report before we call the vote? Go ahead, Councillor Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, but that wasn't my intent to get the Pope involved, but I do have a couple questions. I'm not sure, is the Region of Niagara a member at this point in time? If someone can answer that.
I think that Jason said they are.
Oh, they are? Okay.
Am I correct?
Mr. Mayor, if we could defer this to refer it to Megan Burbeck, who's on the line,
Okay.
she'd be able to answer that question better than I could.
Megan, can you answer? I know that the Regions incorporated climate change and natural heritage into their new official plan, but
so to my knowledge, they are still a member of the PCP program, and they being the Niagara region. The other members of the local municipalities around us are St. Catharines, Welland, West Lincoln, and Grimsby.
Having other, through you, Mr. Mayor, having other municipalities involved in this program, has there been any discussion with them to see if there's been a benefit? Have they gained anything from being membership, having a membership at this point in time?
go ahead, Megan. Do you want to answer that?
So through the chair, they have gained the ability to use tools that have allowed them to, instead of utilizing consultants to work on projects, they've been able to do it themselves easier through their committee groups and minimal staff time.
Okay, that sort of answers that question. One of my biggest concerns right now is our planning department is really taxed in getting their work out the door and meeting deadlines and timelines. I don't want to burden them with additional work because we're one of the fastest growing cities, but there's a lot of complaints out there, and there's phone calls not being returned, there's emails not being returned. You know, as at the Committee of Adjustments, there's some reports that aren't coming there on a timely basis. So that's my concern, is the planning department having the ability. I know there's staff time that will be going into this. I just don't want other work being put aside. We're just revamping the planning department. We've added a couple new additional members, which is great. I think that alleviates some of the concerns I just mentioned. But and that was part of my deferral, is to get through a bit of the reorganization and a bit of movement, getting planning caught up with the work that has to be done. That's critical for us moving forward with a lot of items. So I just don't want this to become a burden and use extra time. So if we do move forward with this, I would like to see a record or a tracking of how much time is being spent on this from our planning department, because if other things aren't getting done, that's one of the critical things that I'm very concerned about. So I just wanted to make sure that was out there. And then I had some other questions, but I don't want to be here all night discussing this. I think there's been a lot of good points, but I'm very, very concerned about the planning department and their capacity to deal with the workload that's being put upon them.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else before I call the vote? Go ahead, Councillor O'Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This would be a question for Megan as well, if I may. I understand that it's mandated that we do the energy conservation and demand management plan every 5 years. So I assume that we're due for one of these plans?
An update, or through the chair, an update would be due by the beginning of summer of next year. This would be something that would be across different departments, primarily public works and planning.
So I read in the report that the cost of completing the work through this would be approximately $50,000. So through the report, are you saying that this $50,000 could be reduced simply by using this PCP program?
Through the chair, that was the thought of staff.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. Did you want to comment, Jason?
I just wanted to comment on Councillor O'Hare's question there. Right now, we're just looking to access the tools in hopes that we would be able to minimize costs to the municipality by doing some of that work in-house. But until we actually get access to those tools and we wouldn't be able to give a realistic number as to what it may be reduced by.
Okay. Okay. Did I didn't get a mover in a seconder. I do?
No, you already have it.
Okay. I've got a mover and a seconder, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Go ahead, Councillor Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering if I could change the recommendation here. In terms of participating, can we change the recommendation number 2 that the city's participation in the PCB program be approved, and that a 1-year annual review of the program will be done? And then, again, I'm not wordsmithing this to great, but what I'd like to see there is sort of this is a pilot project for the next year. Let's see what tools come back, and in a year review this if we're going to maintain this and keep going forward with it. I'd like to see something like that in there that gives me a bit more comfort level.
Let me just, would you have a seconder for that amendment? Okay, Councillor Longo, and we'll get the wording and make sure everybody's happy with the wording.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That staff be directed to conduct a 1-year annual review of the program. Is that good?
Yes, and as long as at that point in time when it comes back, council has the ability to continue or not continue. So I'm good with that. It captures my thoughts.
Anybody else? Is everybody good with that? Okay. Okay, so now we'll put that question on the floor with that. Do we have to vote on that separate?
Mr. Mayor, you can ask if it's a friendly amendment.
Is that a friendly amendment to the mover and seconder?
Councillor Decker and Councillor Sentence.
Are you good with that? It's a friendly amendment, then we can vote on the motion as one. Okay? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, items for consent. Do councillors want to lift any consent items? We have 13.1 and 13.2, and then we have 13.4 to 13.11. I'm sure there'll want to be some discussion on some of these, but I'll leave it to the... Go ahead, Councillor DeRose.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, could I ask that 1310 CLKC 3023 be pulled until after the closed session?
Yes, that's fine. Okay. Go ahead, Councillor D'Angelo.
I'd like to lift 13.8. And, right, yeah, at this moment, just 13.8. That would suffice.
Councillor Longo, did you have one you wanted to pull?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, 13.1, please.
Yep.
And 13.9.
Okay. Anyone else? Seeing none, first of all, I'm gonna get a mover and a seconder to move the items that we're not pulling, and then we'll use the same mover and seconder for the rest. That way we'll be locked in on the mover and seconder. Are you moving, Councillor Hanley?
Move the following items, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the following items.
Okay, and the seconder, Councillor O'Hare. Okay, so now we're doing, right now, we're doing 13.2, 13.4, 13.5, 13.6, 13.7, 13.11. Okay? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, we'll go in order, and we'll start with 13.1, CAO 1 2023 Niagara Gateway Economic Zone and Center Community Improvement Plan, tax increment-based grant application by Maxima Holdings Incorporated. And Councillor Longo's pulled this, but I'll have you, who's going to speak on to, Ken Schulten, our manager of economic development, will speak on this. Go ahead, Ken. Or put the report on the floor, yeah.
Okay, report on the floor is report CAO 1 2023, dated February 7th, 2023, respecting the Niagara Gateway Economic Zone and Center Community Improvement Plan. Tax agreement-based grant application by Maximo Holdings, Inc. be received and the following recommendations be approved. That the application for the Niagara Gateway Economic Zone and Center Community Improvement Plan Program for the property known municipally as 3460 Schmont Parkway in the city of Thorold be approved. For the tax agreement-based grant program for the estimated amount of $487,485.43 from both the city and the Niagara region to be paid over a 10-year period, subject to the owner satisfying the program requirements. That report CAO 1 2023 be circulated to the Niagara region, that the necessary bylaws be prepared and provided to council for consideration, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute any documentation required to satisfy the conditions related to participation in the tax agreement-based grant program.
Thank you. And Ken's there for questions, and I know Councillor Longo, you pulled this, so.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple quick questions. From my understanding, if you can confirm this, is the companies come in, they've expanded, they've created many more jobs, and now they qualify for tax grants. Is that correct? Is that?
So through the mayor, to clarify, Councillor Longo, the applicant has a proposed development. No construction has taken place at this point in time. Should the application be approved, they will be eligible for a grant should they fulfill their requirements under the agreement. That is, as you stated, the expansion of space, the hiring of new full-time equivalent employees, and the meeting of design criteria.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad you said that, because the way I read it, it sounded like they had set up shop already. So they have to meet these targets, so this could be a graduated amount that they receive as a grant if they don't have the proper size building and certain number of employees?
Through you, Mayor, the program is not set up as a graduated program as you described. What happens is they propose a level of investment within the city of Thorold. And in the case of this application, the applicant, Maximo Holdings, is proposing the construction of just over 24,000 new square feet of medical office space with a construction value of $2.4 million. The way the program is implemented is that once construction is completed, essentially an audit is conducted to ensure that they are meeting their obligations under the program. that the number of jobs that they said they would create have been created, and then they are scored under the program and provided the applicable grant.
Okay, great. And I guess my final question is, I don't recall seeing one of these in the last while. Maybe we have, but is this something we're going to be doing more of? Have we done many in the past? And if you can just elaborate on that. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, the Niagara Gateway Economic Zone and Center Community Improvement Program was adopted by City Council, I do believe, in 2013. This is the first application that the city has received through this Community Improvement Plan program. Whether we can expect to see more of these or not is dependent upon the level of new investment that takes place on the City of Thorold's employment lands.
Okay, I got Councillor D'Angelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, one of the beauties of this program is that we're still capturing the original taxes, and the investment that's coming in, then we're only capturing 10%. 90% is going in there for the growth of the business. So it's a win-win. It's not like we're actually paying this. It's actually a reduction in their taxes based on the investment that they're making. So it's a great plan, because if they didn't do anything, if they decide to change their mind tomorrow, they're still paying, well, for us, I'm looking here at the assessed value, they're still paying us $16,000 in taxes. So we're still generating tax revenue. We're just trying to help them expand and create the jobs that we're looking for and create other opportunities and synergies, and we're giving them the incremental component of that. So to me, it's a win-win. Very happy this is taking place. I fought extremely hard to get the Niagara Economic Gateway and Community Zone, Thorold included, because originally we were left out of that, and then we got included with Port Colborne, Niagara Falls, and Welland. So it's great to see this coming to fruition. It's going to be very beneficial, and again, we're not giving tax dollars away. These are dollars we would never have unless this investment comes in. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Thorold.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Ken, has the region come on board yet with this? Or are they still, it's still before them?
Through you, Mayor, staff at the Niagara region have delegated approval authority for these programs. Essentially what that means is once this application receives council approval, we notify staff at the Niagara region of our approval, and they have automatic delegated approval to approve their administrative requirements under the.
Thank you, Ken. And is there a timeline as to when this will be constructed?
The timeline, I do believe, as captured in the application, is to begin construction in the spring of 2023, and then ideally begin occupancy as soon as possible afterwards.
Thank you.
Councillor Hanley, I seen your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to you, to the presenter there. In regards, you mentioned there, that seemed kind of cheap to me, 24,000 square foot addition at a construction cost of 2.4 million? Because to me, that's only $100 per square foot for building. That's pretty cheap in today's market. Is that what you had stated? Would that number be right? You said 24,000 square feet, $2.4 million projected cost. I would think that may be substantially more.
So through you, Mayor, the information contained within the application states the number of square footage, which is, yes, 24,000 square feet. And the estimated construction value that they provided was 2.4 million. If you would like to get clarification on those construction costs, I do believe that a representative from Maximo Holdings is in attendance. I would be happy to.
Yeah, Dylan Earl.
Yeah, just know, because that makes a big difference in development fees. You know what's projected with actually building and.
Oh, you want to wait first, our CAO here?
I'm just looking at the appendix number 2. It said this estimates the completed project being assessed at $3,873,000 based on cost of land construction cost. Actual assessment will be completed by MPAC following the project completion. So that's, I'm just reading it from the.
Okay, I was like, geez, for $100 square foot, I got to get a hold of this guy.
Dylan, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah.
Dylan's on.
All good.
I guess he's not, is he there?
Hi, good evening. This is Dylan.
Yeah, Dylan, did you want to comment on that costing?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. We were budgeting between $200 and $300 a square foot. Originally, it was a single-story building, 12,000 square feet. Then we changed it with the basement addition. So obviously that number has changed. But the way the CIP calculates the eligibility, and Ken can confirm it's through thresholds. So we surpass a certain threshold past that 2.4 million. Maybe it's a little bit more, but yeah, it's definitely not $100 a square foot. I wish, but no, it's going to be a proper construction for a high grade building.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. Much appreciated.
Okay. Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor O'Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Scholten, you spoke a little bit to Councillor Longo about the audit that would be done after the building was completed. Is there also an audit period throughout the 10-year timeframe to ensure that the expectations are being met in terms of jobs?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor O'Hare, in fact, an audit is conducted every year over the 10-year period to verify the information that they do continue to maintain their obligations under the agreement.
Did you have another question? Go ahead.
I just want to make a quick comment, Mr. Mayor, just to let the people know who could be watching, that this building is a new medical office, and it's going to be utilized by ophthalmologists and other health-related specialists. So it helps our demand for, obviously, for medical practitioners in Thorold. Although they're not medical doctors, they're ophthalmologists.
Well, which are doctors? Did you want to comment on that, or is that, you're good? Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay. So same mover and seconder that we had on the original reports. CAO 1/2023. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We pulled 13.8, CLK C27/2023. Request for municipally significant event designation, Jeff Youngblood Memorial Hockey Tournament, and who wants to?
Mr. Mayor,
that's a clerk's. I'll let. Did you want to?
Yep, Mr. Mayor, so it's just the correspondence item is here to be received for information. Once received, we would just ask for a motion from council to designate the event a municipally significant event for the application, and then they could certainly debate that.
And you're the one that pulled that, Councillor D'Angelo. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's why I was looking at the resolution, that it's looking for council's consideration tonight, the option to pass a resolution to designate this as a municipal significant event. I'd like to do so. I think they were asking in the earlier parts. So I'd like to put that motion on the floor that we do that.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'd perhaps recommend that you call the vote on the motion to receive the memorandum, which is what's currently on the floor, and then Councillor D'Angelo could move his motion to...
Okay, so let's, same mover and seconder to receive the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And now, Councillor D'Angelo, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask a couple questions here, because part of it, they're asking for a license, a special occasion permit that allows the sale of alcohol at the arena. A couple questions on that. One is when it's a hockey tournament, so I'm not sure where all their ice time is. So some of their ice time is probably at the Doherty Arena. Some of it may be at the Canada Summer Games facility. I'm not sure. I haven't spoken to the proponents. If they do get a license for that special permit license, is it applicable to both properties? Because I know you have to ask, you have to have permission from council to do that. Is that something that would be applicable to both parcels or both arenas?
I'll
Because
answer
they're both
that
in Thorold?
question too. I don't know if that's a separate issue over there. Jeff, do you want to answer that, or are you aware, or is there a clerk? First of all, I don't know if all their games are going to be played just at the Doherty, and secondly, if they're in both, what's the licensing arrangement?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that's the answer. Typically, they've hosted this event at the Doherty Arena. And I think you have to license the facility, not necessarily the event. So if there are games that are scheduled there, the similar process would have to be followed.
So this is just covering the Doherty Arena, am I correct?
I want to say that has, maybe Matthew has more information on the applicant. That's
Well, and
what
Miss,
historically we've done.
yeah, Mr. Mayor, to the point, this is really just looking for the designation of the municipally significant event to support their application, and they cannot complete that application without that designation. So that would go through the ACGO as part of their permit application process for a special event permit through ACGO. So again, it's not really part of what's up for consideration, but I would presume if they're using multiple locations, their permit would need to cover that.
Right. Does that answer your question?
Well, sort of. Well, I just want to make sure, because if people are, or event organizers are trying to organize events and they have to use both facilities, I think they need to know up front what some of the constraints are, so that they just don't assume that there's a license here. And then any event that goes on at the Canada Games facility, because it's located in Thorold, would they have to get a license from Thorold to do that?
That I don't know. Do you have that answer, Councillor Long?
Well, I think we discussed this before.
We did,
Mr.
I think, because they had.
They have their own license and they are the operator, and I'm not quite sure if they would allow somebody else to sell alcohol because they have a license to sell anytime.
Yeah, at that facility. We went through that with the lacrosse, am I right?
I
Yes.
brought it forward.
And you did, you're correct, and our fire chief wants to comment.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, just to update, the Canada Summer Games or Walker's Ability Center right now has a temporary license. They're trying to get their full license. They've been doing temporary licensing through the Meridian Center down in St. Catharines as a caterer. So that's how they're getting their license right now, but typically right now they're trying to get their own license for their own building. So as Councilor Longo said, I would doubt that they would be able to double up on that, now whether they make some kind of deal to get the arrangements for some proceeds there, I don't know how that would work.
Okay, well, it's sort of a side question then. So then they're licensing it from Thorold, and we would get the revenues from the licensing of the facility because it's in Thorold? Am I hearing that correctly? Or are they licensing it through St. Catharines because they own, or they're managing the Meridian Center? I'd like a little bit of clarity there, because they're operating a business in Thorold with a license from St. Catharines. So I just want to make sure I'm clear on that.
I can provide a clarification for your first question. The request that we have received from them, the email that has come to us, is basically they're saying that the 5th annual Jeff Youngblood Memorial Hockey Tournament will be held March 23rd to March 26th, 2023 at the Thorold Community Arena. I'm not sure that they're asking for anything to be done at Canada Summer Games Park. Thank you.
Okay, but my question on the floor was about the licensing of the Canada Summer Games Park. Is that a jurisdiction under Thorold's, or is that, well, if someone has the answer, please provide it.
Jason's gone.
Through the mayor, the license that I'm assuming Councilor D'Angelo is referring to is the liquor license. That is completely through the AGCO. The City of Thorold doesn't play any part other than commenting to the AGCO at the time of receiving an application as to whether or not the municipality has any objections. But the City of Thorold does not issue a license nor receive any sort of profits associated with it.
Okay, so it's only when they're municipally, I just want to be clear here, so only when it's a municipally designated event that they would have to get an okay from the City of Thorold.
To put the application in,
To put the application forward?
Yeah, they cannot apply for a special event permit from the ACGO for this type of event as a public event without being designated municipally significant. So they must do that, then they can apply for a special event permit.
Okay.
Through the ACGO.
Okay, that clears up, it's very good, thank you, I have a good understanding of that now. And then the secondary question is, and it's in relation to this tournament, but other tournaments, I know we had some excess ice that we are continually paying for. Is there an opportunity to work with some of these organizations? And again, I know a report's going to be coming later regarding the Canada Summer Games facility, but is there an opportunity to get some of that ice that might not be used?
Okay, but that's not relevant to this, I'm just going by It's not relevant to the question about the liquor permit, okay? That's what we're dealing with here.
That's fine. I'll bring it up another time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No. It's a good question, but it's not relevant to what we're debating right now.
Yes. I'm just trying to do the best for the citizens of Thorold and get their value for their money.
Councillor Dividak.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when they do this, are they getting their own insurance, or are they going to fall under the umbrella of the city insurance at the arena? Do we ask them to provide their own insurance? Because sometimes I'll do events and I have to bring my own insurance to the event. And sometimes if you do work with the city, they'll go, no, it's under our umbrella. But just curious if something.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, it is a condition of using the facility that they have to have insurance.
Does that answer your, okay? Anyone else? Okay, so we don't need a motion.
Yep, we do need a motion, Mr. Mayor. We have a mover, we don't have a seconder, I believe. This is to
Councillor
declare-
Hanley.
Councillor
Okay,
Hanley, to
and-
declare it a municipally significant event.
Okay, to declare this a municipally significant event. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. What one is coming, what one's coming back after the closed session? 10, okay, so 9. Go ahead with number 9, CLKC 29-2023.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the floor would be correspondence item CLK C29. This is just for information. It is respecting the public appointments to the Thorold Public Library. Additionally is confidential correspondence item CLK C21 2023, being a memorandum from myself with regards to the individuals who have applied for appointment to the Thorold Public Library Board. At its last meeting, the Thorold Public Library Board amended their terms of reference to increase their board seats to 12. There are 12 applicants, and through discussions with the library, they had no concerns with any of the applicants that had applied, so it has come back before council to make the determination whether or not they'd like to appoint those individuals.
Okay. And the same mover and seconders. Anyone want to speak to that? Go ahead, Councillor Long.
Yes, try to be quick here. I don't know why you bring these things up, but this happened a few years ago where a board decided to reappoint themselves, and I kind of see the same thing here. I'm not sure if they're allowed to do this or it's recommended, but I just like being consistent. And again, this isn't what we thought was going to happen, but if the library board has this power, I'm okay with it. But I think people need to realize what's happened here.
Speak on that, Matthew.
So, Mr. Mayor, without speaking to the individuals who have actually applied, I can advise that there's certainly a mix of the previous board and new individuals, and the comment from library staff was that more voices on the library board would certainly be helpful and something to assist in transition between individuals who have been on there a while and newer individuals. Those were the comments we received. Originally, the direction was to do interviews to determine who would be best of the applicants to fit the limited positions. Again, now that there are 12 applicants and 12 positions, it would be before council to appoint them all, which the library has said they would be accepting of. It would be, if council wished to continue looking at the applicants, they could certainly do so in closed session or continue with interviews if they so chose. But again, we have 12 applicants and 12 positions.
So I think, Councillor Longo, we have the ultimate decision in this at the end.
I just wish they would have come back and said, we'd like to have 12 people on our board. Would you approve it, rather than telling us to approve it? So.
And Matthew?
So, Mr. Mayor, we don't have the ability to determine what their terms of reference say or how many people are on their board, only to appoint the individuals that fill those positions. But they can determine how many positions they have.
Do you have any more, Councillor Longo? I know Councillor Sentence, you had your hand up. Go ahead. And then Councillor DeAngelo.
No, Mr. Mayor, Matthew answered my question, so that's
You're
good.
good?
Thank you. I'm good.
Go ahead, Councillor DeAngelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see that they want to add 12 people onto the board. There's 12 volunteers that want to sit on there. My only concern would be is, I know when you sit on bigger boards, the quorum component becomes sometimes difficult to achieve. if by chance they're not achieving the quorum and they want to reduce the size of the board because a few members decided not, like, I guess what I'm looking at from a procedural point of view is that they have 12 spots now, so quorum's going to be 7 members. If they don't, say 2 members decide because of timing they can't come to the meetings, is that going to pose a problem later? Do they have to come back to council, amend their terms of reference to reduce the amount of quorum? Would that have to come back for council's decision, or can they just do it and move forward without us knowing?
So, Mr. Mayor, I'd have to look into their terms of reference a little further. However, these appointments would be for the remainder of the council term or until a new board is appointed at the new term of council. So I would, without going further into it, suggest that they wouldn't be able to reduce their numbers without essentially ending their board and looking to reappoint a new one in its entirety, which they wouldn't be able to do until the new term of council. So this would tie them to the 12 seats until the new council is in place in 2026.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That answers my question.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, we have the same mover and seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay, and number...
Mr. Mayor, we'll just, since we did make those appointments and put them onto the board, we'll just put up those names for the public to see.
Yes, go ahead. (2023) to 2026 Thorold Public Library Board members. Andrew Foster, that should be Dean. Dean Taylor. Yeah, it's Dean Taylor. Dodie Colin, Elizabeth Yates, Fred Neal, James Simons, Jane Littman, Jean D'Amelio Swire, Larry Cohen, Leonard Ferry, Linda Petrula, and Tony Vandermaas. Okay, now we're moving on to items for consideration. DS 5 2023 zoning bylaw amendment, 41 St. David Street West. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Councillor Sentence and Councillor Daviditis, and I'll ask Jason Simpson to put the report on the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendations of this report are, one, that the zoning bylaw amendment to amend zoning bylaw 60-2019 to rezone the subject lands from R2 to R3 with special regulations be approved. 2, that the zoning bylaw amendment to amend zoning bylaw 214097 to rezone the subject lands from R1C to R3C with special regulations be approved. And 3, that the amendment to bylaw 60-2019 be passed at the same time as the amendment to bylaw 214097. That concludes the recommendations of this report.
Thank you, Jason. Are there any questions regarding this report for staff? Go ahead, Councillor D'Angelo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just looking at page 7/8, on there it has comments from council. Usually in the past, when I served on this council members didn't really comment too much on an application, or just ask questions. But in here, it goes on to say during the question and answer period, there was general support from some members for this type of intensification. Clarification was sought. Moving forward, will our comments from council be captured then in all the reports moving forward? That's why earlier in the meeting, I made a few more comments as opposed to asking questions. So are we going to look for comments during the application process, and will they be highlighted in the report?
Jason?
Through the mayor, typically council's comments are not captured in the reports. However, there were some very specific comments and requests at the last council meeting that this came forward, asking specifically to have information included in this report. And so we felt it was, because the requests were out of the norm for what would typically be included in such a report, it was felt that it would be important to include why this was included, why this information was included.
Does that answer your?
Well, yeah, so it's, yeah, I understand the answer, but it doesn't really say that here. It talks about general support from some members of this type for intensification. That's a little different than just asking for clarification and bringing further information. Just because I guess some members might be in support of it, some members not, but it just talks about in general support. So it sort of labels us all. So if you're gonna put notes like in that, maybe put the counselor's name that actually said, I'm gonna support this project, and then it can be highlighted there. Just point of clarity for me, that's all it is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I'm good either way, putting the comments in or not, but just, they should be a little bit more defined. Thanks.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. DS 6, 2023, zoning bylaw amendment 50 St. David Street West. Can I get a mover and a seconder before we get that report? I got Councillor Decker and a seconder, Councillor DeRose. And again, I'll turn it over to Jason Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the recommendations of this report are, one, that the Development Services Report DS6 2023 be received. Two, that the zoning bylaw amendment to amend zoning bylaw 60-2019 to rezone the subject lands from R1C to R2 with special regulations be approved. Three, that the zoning bylaw amendment to amend zoning bylaw 2140-97 to rezone the subject lands from R1C to R2B be approved. And lastly, recommendation 4, that the amendment to bylaw 60-2019 be passed at the same time as the amendment to bylaw 2140-97. That concludes the recommendations of this report.
Jason, again, I'll open the floor up for any questions regarding this report. Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I remember this one, and I asked the fire chief a question. I'm wondering if he can elaborate on page 3 of the report. There's a schematic. I'm just curious, Chief, will people be allowed to park in this shared driveway?
Through you, Mayor, Council, from my understanding, nobody will be parking in that laneway going back to the back driveway. The laneway is to be there for the people who live in the back part of that house, so they can get back to their driveway at the back. At that point in time, fire had no issues with that situation.
Okay, I understand why it's there, but my question is, could potentially 3 cars, let's say, park near the street and one up, and I'm not concerned about them upsetting the rear neighbors. I'm concerned about, from a safety and fire standpoint, is your office okay with that? Are you allowed to park there, or is it a laneway?
I think Jason wanted to chime in on
Sure.
that. Go ahead.
Through the mayor to Councillor Longo, I don't have the specifics before me with regards to that driveway. However, if it is a required fire access route, if it is required for that purpose, then nobody would be permitted to park within that fire access route. If it is not a requirement for fire services, then people would be permitted to park within that driveway. But as to whether or not it is would be a designated fire route, I don't have that information before me at this time.
Go ahead, Councillor Longo.
Okay, I don't know what to say, because I brought it up, I just wanted to get some clarity there, not for this application and for others that could potentially come forward. Because people could look at this can be what Mr. Ford wants done, and what's the legality of that shared driveway? I think we need to understand that moving forward.
Go ahead, Jason.
Through the mayor, so this application is for a zoning amendment. They would still need to go through the proper building permit process, at which point the fire access would be reviewed by both the building division and the fire department. and they would have to ensure that the necessary access for fire department vehicles was provided and maintained.
Okay. Go ahead. Did you want to comment further, Terry? Go ahead.
Yeah, just
Chief Dixon.
through Mayor to council, just to give some clarity on that. So typically in this type of situation, we would never use that laneway for fire apparatus per se. We would just bring hoses to the back of the building because we'd be in the collapse zone and we would never put our apparatus in that situation. So in this particular situation, it's just how it's laid out, we wouldn't use that laneway for that particular thing.
But again, that'll be addressed further in the planning. Am I correct, Jason?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Further questions on this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. PWCS 10-2023, Lakeview Cemetery Administration Building Design Contract Award. Can I get a mover and a seconder before we put the report? I got Councillor Sentence as a mover, and I have Councillor Decker as a seconder. And I'll turn this over to our Director of Public Works and Community Services, Jeff Holman.
Mr. Mayor, the recommendation is that one, that the direct appointment of Raimondo and Associates Architects, Inc. be approved to complete the detailed design for the renovation of the Lakeview Cemetery Administration Building at an upset limit of $49,500 plus HST. Two, that the direct appointment of Hallex Engineering Limited be to to complete the electrical, mechanical, and structural engineering design for the renovation of the Lakeview Cemetery Administration Building be approved at a limit of $29,300 plus HST. Number three, that the direct appointment of Haluka Cost Consulting, Inc. to complete a Class B cost estimate for the renovation of the Lakeview Cemetery Administration Building be approved at an upset limit of $3,500 plus HST. Four, that funding for this project be allocated from the Mausoleum General Improvement Reserve, 50%, and the Municipal Land and Building Reserve, 50%. And five, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary agreements and documents required for the project.
Thank you. And I'll open the floor for questions regarding this report. Councillor DeRose, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm having a problem with, first we were told it was gonna be a $50,000 amount that we agreed to, and now it's up to 83. I'm just having an issue with this. I visited the cemetery on February 3rd, my dad's anniversary of his passing 11 years ago. I looked through the windows, and I'd like to get in there and have a look, and have council be able to have a look. And I think all councilors should be allowed to have a look inside. The outside structure is in great condition, and what I observed through the windows is that the building is fixable. It appears that the roof wasn't maintained. It looked like there's water leakage coming from above. I could see mold on wallpaper that was attached to brick, and this mold, once that wallpaper is removed, it'll expose brick, which I think will enhance the beauty of the place. I talked to previous workers. They said it was a great place as it is. In my opinion, is there any way we can use that $83,000, get the mold removed, and just get a construction company in to do the work? And I'm not a construction person, but 150 grand, I think it'd be like new. And that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to ask Jeff, was this tendered, the design, was the design tendered?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, no, the recommendation is that there are direct appointment for these firms.
Because, yeah, I just don't see spending $83,000 to design something that's fine as it is, except it needs to be fixed. That $83,000 could go a long way to fixing it, and I think it would happen a lot sooner than later if we just got the ball rolling with that.
Councillor Sentence.
I looked at this and I thought it was good. I think this is what we've been asking for 4 years, is to get this building going. I'm not a construction guy, so if there's improvements or cost savings that can happen, I'm for it, but I think we should get this going and get it going now. We have asked you to do this, and for 4 years, I just think, let's get going, and if you can save money somewhere, absolutely save money. So I trust you guys. I don't know what I'm talking about, and I hope we go forward with this. This is what we need, not trailers, not new buildings. We need this building to be good for our staff and the citizens to come out to. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Decker.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to echo Councillor Sentence's comments. I agree. We've been asking for this for well over 2 years to get this building up and going. I'm not sure when they get in there what's in there, whether there's mold, asbestos, whatever. It's got to get cleaned. It's got to get renovated. We have to have proper washrooms in there, offices. So yeah, like, we need to get this going. We've been talking about it. We can't have our staff working out in a trailer continuously. So I agree. Let's get this going. That's what we've wanted. So, and that's what our residents want, to be able to have a building that they can go to when they're at the cemetery.
Thank you, Councillor Decker. Councillor Hanley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A constructural assessment, to me, would have been in hand first. You know, instead of going this route, we could take a person in there, we get a person on the roof, check the roof. I don't think we had to spend the $83,000. Yes, we've been asking for a significant amount of time. What it's going to cost us, so if it's costing us $83,000 presently, we could assume at today's market probably 12 to 14%. So we're looking at probably over $1 million project on that building, which I don't believe we need $1 million work either to get into the building. We do need it done, no doubt about it. But another problem I have is that a direct, no tendering process. You know, to me, I know that the proponent or the person named within has done a significant amount of work within the city of Thorold, but regardless of that, I don't believe it brings for a fair process in today's business world and the climate we have. I think that competitiveness is a part of the process. Are we getting a better deal from Romano and Associates by not tendering it out? But I have a problem with an $87,000 project, which I believe, looking at standard construction cost today, would be over $1 million project to retrofit it, because we're not going to pay someone $83,000 and tell us it's $150,000 to fix it. So my problems with the tendering process, I believe that it should be tendering. And I, just for clarification, when was I always believed that the policy was that if it was over a $20,000 project, we had to go through the tendering process, and the only way to override that process, if that it was an emergency, and that the expenditure had to come through the office of the CAO, as was the case, example, for Station 3 for the emergency work that needed to be done in the beams. So do we have a policy now in place that a position or a manager, senior manager, can choose himself to not go through the procurement policy process and just pick an individual?
Our Director of Finance, Maria Morrow.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we do have a procurement policy that is under review. We hope to bring it forward soon, but the policy that is in existence and has been in existence for many years has something called purchase by negotiation, and it lists a number of criteria where you can not go through the formal request for proposal or the tendering process, and it's things like where it's in the best interest of the city, where it there for time sensitive type things, for to be expeditious, and as part of that, it does require over the threshold that the department head does come to council for approval and does indicate that it is a direct appointment.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the expedience of it, but I believe a significant amount of months have passed since council previously approved for a trailer to be out there that's never been used. So we were behind the 8 ball, And if that was the intention of staff, then we should have saved the 60 grand because we've never used the trailer. And that money could have been used more towards what we're trying to accomplish today. So we're already looking at 83, 60, $150,000 spent, and we still will not see anything. So that's another concern of mine. So I understand the procurement policy in a time-sensitive manner. I appreciate that too, but I believe we dealt with this a significant amount of time ago. And the opportunity for putting a proper procurement policy out there was available, and we didn't do it. I don't agree with it, but we'll accept it.
Thank you. Is there any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Dion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted, just so I'm clear here, so we're going to do the architectural design, the mechanical, engineering, electrical, structural, and then we're going to get a Class B cost estimate. So will this put us in a position, once this is done, that then we tender that out? Those specifications, we'll tender that out and then get a tender to do the work that's on here? I just want to make sure that, and then the other thing is, what sort of timeline are we looking at to get these items completed? And then I do have a couple other questions, but we could start there for now.
Go ahead, Jeff.
The answer is yes to the first question. The second question is with respect to the timelines. That was the whole objective of trying to use the direct appointment, is to engage somebody who's familiar with the site, who's done work on the site. And the hope is that, the intent is that by the end of March or middle of April, we'll be well along the process so that we can consider the capital costs in a reasonable period of time.
Okay, so then I guess this is just for me. The Class B cost estimate, why would you need that if you're going to be tendering out a project? Because whatever the tenders come in is going to be the cost of the project. Why would we need a Class B cost estimate? So if you can maybe elaborate on that?
So, thank you. Mr. Mayor, a Class B cost estimate is helpful in determining what the costs are going to be within about 10 to 15%. So this is a project we don't have funded. It's not in our capital forecast. We'll have to come up with some financing scheme to make sure that the numbers work. If you wait until after you tender something and the costs come way out of line, you may be forced to go and retender again. But by having the advantage of a Class B cost estimate, you'll be able to bring not only the tender award report, but also how we're going to finance it, how we're going to fund it. It also helps us too that if there are other sources of financing, grants, whatever that might be out there, we can make a more accurate cost application, and it's more likely to be received. So the purpose of the Class B is to have a better number and not rely on the market to tell us how much we're going to pay. If it comes in and it is $1 million project and council wishes to defer it to the next year, then they can have more comfort in that number moving forward.
Okay, thanks for that was a good explanation. I appreciate that. This is a catch-22. We have to move. I'm the one who brought this or asked to reconsider it, bring it back bring it back to council so we can make a decision here, because I know the prices are high, but we're not giving our taxpayers the service they want out there. And with the mausoleum, if I'm correct, scheduled to be started in 2024, if I'm not mistaken, or at least the process. This may take a while to get this done, to have people out at the cemetery to then service the residents and those that are looking for new spots is very critical. It says an upward limit. I don't know if you've had any discussions to drive that upward limit down. I know Mr. Raimondo is formerly from Thorold, lives just on the outside of Thorold, but if he is the person that's responsible, it's an upset limit. So I'm hoping that your negotiation skills could bring it down, which would be beneficial, and then we could sort of move forward on this. It's one of those, like, the longer we wait, the worse it's going to get for us, and we're not giving the I shouldn't call them customers, but more our taxpayers and our residents the services that they've been asking for. So I don't know if anyone else has any other comments.
The only comment I can make is regarding what you said. We reconsidered and brought it back to ask for this report because we knew we had to address the issue. The second thing, which Jeff brought up at the last meeting that I want to address regarding the trailer. The trailer expense, which Jeff said, the project, if we move ahead, is going to take a year at least to get done, so we need the trailer at least for that year. Am I correct, Jeff? So that expense would have been there regardless, because by the time we go out to tender and get the project done, the trailer's required on site for the period of time of the construction. So I remember that coming out of that discussion. So it wasn't like we were spending an extra 60, it was because if we do the job, the building's gonna take an X amount of months to get to that point, so. Any further questions regarding this report? Go ahead.
Can we expedite the mausoleum build any quicker, sort of tying it into what's going on here so that we can move forward with that? I know there's demand for the mausoleum crypts. We don't have them. People are going to another facility in our community. So if, again, I'm just throwing this out to staff, if there's any way of expediting that, and trying to put these both together so that it's...
We can discuss that at budget.
Yes.
Because it's on I think it's on the list as, yeah, as a deferral, so we can have that discussion, Councillor.
Yeah, it would be nice to have this office open and the mausoleum open at the same time with the expansion. It would really be helpful and I think beneficial to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. PWCS 2, 2023, Bell Canada 3.0 gigabytes. Or is that? Hey? No, is this report, Paul? No, just the presentation was Paul. Yeah. Bell Canada 3.0 GDPS fiber to the home project. And can I get a mover and a seconder regarding this report? Councillor Daviditis, seconder Councillor Hanley, and again, I'll turn this over to Jeff Holman.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The first recommendation, obviously, doesn't need to be approved. And it's the reason for them asking to postpone the presentation is because they'd like to know whether or not the agreement's in place. There is some confidential information that we can discuss in closed session if that's what you prefer to do tonight, but their preference would be to come back and make some type of announcement to council and to the community about their project. The recommendation is that 2023 budgets be adjusted to reflect the operating capital costs with funding, with full funding from Bell Canada, and that the terms and conditions of a service level agreement between Bell Canada and the City of Thorold be considered in closed session.
So, do we need to address this one after closed session?
Mr. Mayor, it depends if councillors have questions on the closed session content that goes with the report. If they're suffice to have read it and are comfortable with the content of the report, they could approve it in open now, or they could defer, go into closed session to discuss that and approve it after closed session.
So, my question to council is, do you want to discuss this in closed session? I get a nod over here. Is everybody in agreement? We should address it in closed session in case there's any questions, and then deal with it after closed session. Okay? That's what we're doing. Okay? CLKC 28-2023. 2023, yes. Councillor Committee appointments. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Got a mover, Councillor Hanley, seconder, Councillor Longo. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried.
So, Mr. Mayor, with that, this was a report to advise that there were some vacancies on committees. First being the Tourism Advisory Committee. We do have a vacancy. If a councillor would be nominated to take that vacancy, then council could put a motion forward now to appoint someone to the Tourism Advisory Committee.
Okay, is there anyone, and what time, when do they meet? So that, do we know? Or have they met yet?
Do we have?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they meet during the daytime.
They meet during the daytime, so it would have to be a counselor that's available to meet during the daytime. Is there anyone on council that would like to put their name forward? At this time, I don't see a name, so we'll move on to the next one.
So the second one is with regards to the Runway of Recognition Advisory Committee, but we did defer the information item earlier till after closed session, so we can defer this motion till after closed session as well.
Okay. Do I need a motion to defer? Okay. Okay. Up next, notices of motion. Councillor DeRose.
Yeah, I'd like to bring a notice of motion for the next meeting to forgive the future charges for Thorold.
Sorry, Councillor, we need your microphone.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Just a request to forgive the Thorold Baseball and Thorold Soccer Club late fees that have been applied in the report this past summer. Thank you.
Okay. You'll bring that next meeting?
Correct, yes.
I have Councillor Decker on her notice of motion.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. That I'm providing a notice that at a future council meeting, I plan to bring forward a motion requesting a letter for support in bringing the LCBO store back to the city of Thorold.
Thank you. Councillor Hanley?
Yes, I'd like to put a notice of motion on the floor in regards to human rights. Municipalities are critical actors in determining the extent to which fundamental human rights are realized in people's lives. There's currently a lack of institutional mechanisms at the local level to protect and promote fundamental human rights, international human rights, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and provincial human rights legislation which are legally applicable to municipal decision-making. And I'd like to bring that forward for our code of conduct, or we have no policy in the city of Thorold to practicing human rights or Canadian Charter of Rights.
Thank you. Okay, motions. Councillor Hanley, Canada Summer Games lease agreement.
Mr. Mayor, after quite a debate today and some discussions, I'm in consideration in regards to go ahead at this time. In regards to my motion being immature, and I would like to withdraw my motion at this time, but reserving the right to bring it or a similar motion forward at a later date. I understand that Councillor DeRose, and I talked to him today, has tabled a motion and has agreed to have staff report come forward to address his motion, which has been some time now. And I asked that I expect reports and presentation agreed to, that it will be provided to council hopefully by March 21st, 2003 at the latest, and failing which I will resubmit my notice of motion at that time.
Thank you, Councillor Hanley. Bylaw enforcement, Councillor DeRose, on your motion.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that staff be directed to provide a report summarizing the necessary steps and budgetary impacts of providing evening and weekend bylaw enforcement services.
So you're going to bring a notice of motion regarding... What?
This is the motion.
No, this is the motion. Can you repeat that for me,
Sorry,
please?
Mr. Mayor.
Sorry.
That staff be directed to provide a report summarizing the necessary steps and budgetary impacts of providing evening and weekend bylaw enforcement services.
First of all, can I get a seconder for that? I got Councillor Hanley, and then Jason, did you want to comment on that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I believe that request has already been made by council. That's something that I'm currently in the works on and hoping to bring forward to council within the next couple of meetings.
Okay. Are you good with that then, and you withdraw that motion because there's a report coming?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes. Yes.
But it's duly noted that you raised it again.
Yeah,
okay?
and any of Jason's abilities to try to find a solution would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. And we can discuss that further as well at budget, Councillor DeRosa, okay? Statement by councillors. I got up first, Councillor D'Angela. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This one's regarding traffic enforcement. This is coming from the NRPS, and I'm just going to read what's on their website. And it's changed, so that's why I just want to highlight it. This is from the Traffic Enforcement Unit. It says, the NRPS wants traffic complaints. Niagara Regional Police Service has set up a hotline which allows people to provide information on traffic safety issues. The hotline lets the public leave information about areas where there are road safety concerns such as speeding or other Highway Traffic Act violations where a greater police presence is required. This program doesn't replace the existing ways of dealing with collisions and other traffic issues, but serves as an additional way of reporting problems that you may have seen or become aware of. By the public and the police working together, the Niagara Regional becomes a safer place for everyone. To use the NRPS traffic hotline, and the reason I bring this up is at our last board meeting, they introduced a brand new number. So it's 289-248-1060. Again, 289-248-1060. It's on their website, but it's, again, it's only for traffic complaints, this hotline. And you can also send traffic complaints by the email using the online traffic complaints form, which is on their website. So I think this is critical to get that information out. I brought this up in December, but they've changed the number, so it's vitally important.
Can we pass that on, and we'll make sure that we get that on our social media, as well as we can do on our website.
Yeah,
okay?
that's the other reason I want to bring it up, because I did request it in December. But yeah, if we could get this into the e-newsletter, we have one coming up at the end of February, that would be great. And then also on our website, because again, to get this information out as much as we can. The other item I want to highlight in regards to this traffic enforcement is we did have a traffic safety committee meeting, and there's some good discussion there, so we're moving forward a few items. But one of the items that was brought forward was speed recognition signs. We don't have many that are displayed in Thorold right now, and I did talk to Mr. Santo. There is money that's allocated in the budget to buy a couple of those. They already have one set that's still working. So the plan is to get those out as quickly as possible and start educating drivers throughout different parts of our community. They're going to be portable signs that usually get mounted onto a pole, so we can rotate those to different parts of the city. The committee will have some input on where they're going to go, but I think we have to start educating people in terms of their driving habits. Enforcing and ticketing is not going to solve everything. The education part is very important, so we are moving proactively with that from the committee standpoint, from a staff standpoint. So I just wanted to let the public know. Yeah, everything sounds a little better in the sense that if we can report stuff to the police, and also talking to Mr. Santo, that when these signs go up that monitor your speeds, they're the ones that flash and tell you if you're going too slow, well, actually too fast, and it'll say that. But they also record data, which is very important, so we can then pass that on to the Niagara Regional Police also to show that these areas here have some high traffic speeding areas, and this way hopefully it'll help with some added enforcement. So looking at a two-pronged approach, education and enforcement, to make our community a little safer. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Mayor.
Councillor. Councillor Hanley.
Thank you. Same type of issue, Henry. Thanks for bringing that up. Actually, I don't know if many are aware, there was what you may consider a serious accident on South Bridge Street over the weekend. I'm sure the city's well aware of it. Probably 50, 60 feet of guard railing eliminated right beside the path that the residents from the island and Dufferin Street and that stuff walk over. They want to make a note of it, and I went too. That's the importance and significance of rebuilding the South Street Bridge. There's residents that walk along there with their dogs. I had several pictures sent to me within minutes of an individual walking there. This action occurred. The people actually were able to get their car free and drive away before the police even showed up. And if I could, through you, Mr. Mayor, if we're responsible for the guard railing there, I'm sure the city's aware of it. By the looks of it, when I went out there, the remainder of the guard railing posts, the way they snapped off, are probably significantly rotted. And what does the city plan on doing to protect that area? Because it's now wide open, the walkway, and you're actually walking right beside a road where they're doing 80, 90 kilometers an hour. So I'm sure the city's aware of it. Are you? Is it through you, Mr. Mayor? And what are we doing to protect the residents walking through there while the guard railings are
I've seen the
gone?
pictures online, but
Yeah.
are we aware, we're well aware of that situation there?
Yes, we're made aware of it. We have, we're trying to collect some more information, see if there's a police report actually filed, to see if there's an opportunity to recover the costs through insurance. But we do have a guide rail inspection and replacement program, and we can look at extending it through there. The road isn't designed to be driving at 80 or 90 miles an hour, so there has to be, you know, some additional education and some enforcement, as well as some review of how traffic moves through that community.
Okay, if I could, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah,
My concern is, we need to address it, and we need to put a guard railing back up there ASAP. We're giving our residents, are right in the, maybe a path. If you've been out there, it's no further from me to where Jason's sitting, to where the road is. And this individual, from my understanding, was able to leave the scene of the accident before the police arrived. And they're still looking to identify the individual who did it. But it's a safety concern for the city, so if I need to put a recommendation on the floor, a motion on the floor that the city address this,
I think
it's a safety reason.
Staff direction, right?
If we could.
So under statements of Councillor, Mr. Mayor, we don't have any direction to staff at this point. It would need to be a notice of motion, but I believe you've raised the issue with staff at this point, and
They're well aware and
Yeah, I would hate to have to wait 3 weeks and in the interim something happened and say, well, because of procedure, I had to wait 3 weeks, and unfortunately that happened.
that's a good point. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
through Mr. Mayor, as you have raised, Councillor Angley, this is a safety concern, so this will be taken up as a top priority for staff. Thank you.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you very much to yourself and Jeff.
Okay, is that it? You want to comment on that?
Just quickly, because I know staff is looking at this, can they look at signage? There is not a lot of signage on that road indicating speeds. So if, and while looking at the guardrail, how they're gonna solve that, take a look at what signage is there. Again, it's part of the education. I know everyone should know the speed limits, but sometimes it has to be in front of your face before you follow it properly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Before we go into closed session, it's 9:56. I need a mover and a seconder to go past 10 o'clock. I got a mover, Councillor Sentence, and a seconder, Councillor O'Hara. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay.
Okay.
Do I have to read this to all the councillors?
Hey, you don't gotta get up at 4 in the morning, right?
So if you want to get, yeah, before we go into closed session, I got the motion coming, please.
9:15.
And then, before we go into closed session, you have a minute to go. Okay, everybody pay attention. That council do now move into closed session for the purpose of receiving information of a confidential nature respecting a matter of commercial and financial information supplied in confidence to the municipality, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization under Section 239(2)(1) of the Municipal Act 2001, Bell Canada 3.0, GBPS Fiber to Home Project, Service Level Agreement. Number 2, matters respecting personnel matters about an identifiable individual under Section 239(2)(b) of the Municipal Act 2001, public appointments to the Thorold Municipal Nonprofit Housing Corporation. And 3, matters respecting personal matters about an identifiable individual under Section 2B of the Municipal Act 2001, public appointments to the Runway Recognition Subcommittee and the Darlene Ryan Port Robinson Community Center Board of Management.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just also advise, originally there was a training session that was put on for this evening. Training session was scheduled to last good 90 minutes at least. Through some conversation with the presenters, it was determined that that'll be brought at another meeting of council as it went so late this evening.
Okay, so that isn't being held. Okay, I need a mover and a seconder. Can I get a mover and a seconder? I have mover Counselor DeRose, seconder Counselor O'Hare. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Do you just want to take a few minute break and stretch before we start closing?